On a quiet morning in a modern suburb, the street looks familiar at first glance. Houses line the road, a bus sighs to a stop, and commuters check their phones. But beside the shelter, a hadrosaur the size of a bus itself lowers its head to crop the city grass. Its skin carries faint reflective paint, like a living traffic cone, and a collar tag blinks with a GPS signal as its breath steams across the pavement. Farther away, beyond the last row of buildings, a low thunder rolls across the air. It is not distant traffic. It is a tyrannosaur, moving along a fenced green corridor that parallels the highway, watched as routinely as changing lights and crossing signals. In this world, checking for a 6-ton predator before stepping off the curb is as ordinary as listening for engines, and the boundary between wildlife and infrastructure has been rebuilt around ancient reptiles. This is not only a vision of dinosaurs surviving by chance. It is a question about partnership. What if humans did not simply endure these animals as hazards, but shaped a long-term alliance with them? What if some dinosaurs became co-workers in fields and construction sites, mounts on trade routes, guardians at city edges, and even recognized members of households and extended families? To understand this alternate history, the story begins far before the first bus route and suburban lawn. It starts when the asteroid that ended the Cretaceous never struck, or was diverted by processes deep in space, and Earth's surface followed a different path. During this time, non-avian dinosaurs continued to evolve alongside early mammals, occupying forests, coasts, and floodplains on continents that slowly drifted as the mantle moved beneath the crust. Over time, primates emerged into a world already dominated by giant herbivores and swift, intelligent predators. From those first cautious encounters, this process of coexistence would unfold in stages. Small, clever theropods might learn to track human settlements for scraps, while herd-living hadrosaurs and ceratopsians grazed near early farms. As a result, selective tolerance and early attempts at control could lead to domestication, then to dino-based civilizations in which agriculture, transport, and warfare depended on trained reptiles. Later, industrial and digital ages would rise with dinosaurs still present, integrated into factories, energy networks, and even virtual monitoring systems. This scenario is not detached from real science. Birds are living dinosaurs, and many already share human cities, from pigeons nesting on concrete ledges to parrots thriving in urban parks. Paleontology reveals herd behavior in hadrosaurs, complex brains in some theropods, and ecological roles that can be compared with modern animals used for work and companionship. Because of this, the idea of training certain species while fearing others rests on ecology and domestication research rather than pure fantasy. By the end of this exploration, the most promising dinosaur allies will be clear, along with the species that remain dangerous neighbors. The narrative will trace how such relationships reshape cities, influence wars and religions, and guide the shared future evolution of humans and dinosaurs on this planet. To understand how humans might one day share cities and fields with living dinosaurs, the story must turn back to one of the sharpest turning points in Earth's history. 66 million years ago, a 10-kilometer asteroid struck the planet near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. In the real timeline, this single event reshaped the surface, the climate, and the fate of life. When the asteroid hit, it punched through the crust and into the upper mantle, releasing unimaginable heat. Rock vaporized. A crater more than 150 kilometers wide formed in seconds. Ejecta rained back through the atmosphere, heating the air until forests on distant continents ignited. During this time, global firestorms swept across landscapes. Soot and sulfur aerosols then rose high into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight. An impact winter followed. Oceans cooled, food chains collapsed, and most non-avian dinosaurs vanished. Yet this outcome was not guaranteed. A small change in the asteroid's size, strength, or entry angle could have produced a very different Earth. In one plausible divergence, the asteroid begins to fragment in the atmosphere. Instead of one catastrophic blow, multiple smaller impacts scatter energy over a wider area. Regional devastation still occurs, but the global firestorms are weaker and the impact winter is shorter. In another scenario, the asteroid passes slightly higher through the atmosphere and becomes a near miss. Shockwaves and intense heating still disturb the climate for years. Acid rain, temporary cooling, and wildfires stress ecosystems, but they do not erase entire lineages. A third possibility involves a slightly smaller impactor. It still forms a large crater and darkens the skies, yet enough plants survive to support many herbivorous dinosaurs, and enough prey remains for large predators. As a result, the late Cretaceous ecosystems do not end abruptly. Large dinosaurs persist alongside expanding mammals. This process creates more complex food webs, where multi-ton herbivores, pack-hunting theropods, and agile nocturnal mammals share the same river valleys and coastal plains. Over time, evolutionary arms races intensify. Some ceratopsians develop heavier frills and horns. Certain theropods refine binocular vision and coordination. Mammals respond with sharper senses, faster breeding, and flexible diets. Because of this shared survival, dinosaurs remain dominant in many warm, fertile regions of the continents. Mammals still diversify, but in this timeline, many lineages stay small or specialized for life in forests, burrows, and marginal habitats. Do intelligent primates still appear under these conditions? The answer depends on scattered environments where dinosaurs are rare, climates are variable, and complex social behavior offers an advantage. In those ecological pockets, primates gradually emerge, then hominins, and eventually humans, but on a planet where giant reptiles never fully surrendered their claim. For tens of millions of years, dinosaurs and mammals evolve side by side. Their behaviors, migrations, and hunting strategies shape each other. By the time human societies arise, dinosaur intelligence, social structures, and continental distributions have already been tuned by this long coexistence, setting the stage for encounters far more intricate than simple fear or conquest. By the time dinosaurs and mammals have settled into this long coexistence, the planet has already passed through its moment of crisis. The asteroid still strikes, but in this timeline it is smaller, or its energy is spread differently through the atmosphere. Forests burn, skies darken, and temperatures fall, yet the extinction is patchy rather than absolute. Many lineages survive, and Earth enters a Cenozoic that is altered, but not emptied. In the decades and centuries after impact, the surface experiences stressed climates and shifting belts of vegetation. Some regions endure harsh winters and shortened growing seasons, while others remain relatively mild. Hadrosaur herds retreat along coastal plains and river valleys. Ceratopsians abandon some interior basins and persist in refuges where plants still regenerate. Small feathered theropods move through fragmented forests, and a few sauropod groups hold on in low-latitude floodplains where frost is rare. Over time, ranges contract, expand, and split as continents continue to drift and climates oscillate. This unstable world imposes strong evolutionary pressures. Cooler intervals favor individuals with better insulation, whether dense, filamentous coverings in small theropods or thicker skin and subcutaneous fat in large herbivores. Groups that can coordinate migration, defend feeding grounds, and share information gain an advantage. As a result, social behavior becomes even more elaborate. Vocal calls, visual displays, and coordinated movement help herds and packs navigate unpredictable seasons. In some lineages of Maniraptor and theropods, prolonged juvenile care and flexible foraging encourage larger brains and more complex problem solving in a manner broadly comparable to the way certain birds and mammals responded in actual Earth history. ecological roles stabilize around a new hierarchy. Giant herbivores, including hadrosaurs and surviving sauropods, act as ecosystem engineers. Their feeding strips branches, opens clearings, and transports nutrients across the landscape, reshaping forests and grasslands much as elephants do today. Mid-sized omnivorous theropods, able to crush bone, tear flesh, and process plant material, become adaptable generalists that move between carcasses, fruiting groves, and shoreline invertebrate beds. At smaller scales, agile feathered maniraptorans slip into niches similar to raccoons or corvids, raiding nests, caching food, and learning local patterns of danger and opportunity. Evidence from the real fossil record supports this imagined radiation. Bone beds of hadrosaurs and ceratopsians show many individuals preserved together, indicating herd living and possible age-structured groups. Trackways record parallel paths and turning movements that resemble coordinated travel. Endocasts of certain theropod skulls, including troodontids and dromaeosaurids, reveal relatively large brain volumes and well-developed regions for vision and balance. During this time, such traits would be honed by selection, making some dinosaur groups increasingly trainable and cognitively flexible over tens of millions of years. By the late Cenozoic of this alternate Earth, the result is a landscape that feels familiar, yet profoundly different. Early hominins moved through mosaics of woodland and open country, gathering plants and scavenging along river margins. In the distance, layered silhouettes of hadrosaur and ceratopsian herds stand against the horizon, their movements reshaping the vegetation underfoot. Packs of mid-sized theropods shadow the herds, testing their defenses, while smaller bright-eyed maniraptorans watch primate foragers from the branches. How long can such parallel lives remain separate? The first true encounter between human and dinosaur is approaching, and it will not be a simple meeting of hunter and prey. But what if that first encounter never involved humans at all? What if the primates in the branches stayed forever small and hidden, and the planet's great experiment with intelligence belonged entirely to dinosaurs? In such a world, non-avian dinosaurs remain the dominant large animals on land. Mammals pressed into the shadows by giant herbivores and swift predators might remain small nocturnal insect eaters. Over time, their role in most ecosystems would be limited to scavenging, seed eating, and avoiding the gaze of sharp-eyed theropods. The great open niches that once allowed primates to expand into daytime forests and grasslands would remain firmly closed. Under these conditions, any rise of complex tool use would likely come from within the dinosaur lineage itself. Among the many predatory groups, a troodontid-like lineage stands out as a candidate. Fossils of troodontids show relatively large brains for their body size, keen senses, and grasping forelimbs. During this time, such animals could begin to experiment with their environment in ways that go beyond simple hunting. Picture a late evening scene on a floodplain. A feathered maniraptoran dinosaur, about 2 meters long, stands upright beside a fallen log. Its hands, tipped with curved claws, hold a branch stripped of bark. With repeated careful motions, it uses the branch to probe a burrow, flush out small animals, and test the depth of mud-filled channels. Nearby, another individual picks up rounded stones, dropping them from a height to crack open tough eggs. This process of trial and error, repeated across generations, might slowly favor more flexible behavior and more complex problem solving. In some regions, lightning ignites dry vegetation. A small group of these troodontid-like animals watches from a safe distance as fire moves across the landscape. Over time, they could learn that recently burned ground offers easy hunting and fresh plant growth. The step from following fire to manipulating it is significant, but the pattern echoes the early history of hominins: observation, opportunistic use, and eventual control. However, this documentary follows a different path. The central focus is the relationship between humans and dinosaurs, not a dinosaur-only civilization. Because of this, the timeline assumes that even under dinosaur dominance, there is still evolutionary room for primates and eventually hominins to arise. A plausible route involves regional refuges where dinosaurs are less abundant or less diverse. Isolated uplands, dense, seasonally dry forests, or cooler continental interiors could favor small, warm-blooded mammals that can regulate body temperature and remain active across a wide range of conditions. Climatic shifts, driven by long-term changes in Earth's orbit, volcanic activity, and the arrangement of continents, might periodically stress large reptilian lineages while favoring endurance hunters with insulating fur and efficient lungs. As a result, certain mammal groups could radiate into new roles as insectivores, omnivores, and eventually fruit and leaf eaters in complex forest canopies. In these layered habitats, agile primates with grasping hands and forward-facing eyes would find opportunities that most dinosaurs do not fully occupy. Over millions of years, some primates begin to exploit the edges of forests and open woodlands, testing bipedal postures and longer distance travel. To return to the main timeline, the view now narrows to Africa a few million years ago. The planet's crust has uplifted rift valleys and high plateaus, and shifting climates have opened mosaics of woodland and grassland. Early hominins move cautiously through this environment, carrying simple stone tools, while in the distance, the calls of dinosaurs still echo across the plains. The stage is set for two very different intelligent lineages to finally share the same landscapes. Millions of years into this alternate history, Earth's continents support a very different set of neighbors. Early bipedal hominins step out from the shelter of mixed woodlands onto open savannas where dinosaurs already dominate the horizon. To one side, a column of medium sauropods moves like living hills across the surface. To the other, small feathered theropods weave through tall grasses, their calls cutting across the afternoon heat. This is the backdrop for their first cautious glances. In these landscapes, predator and prey relationships are already complex before hominins arrive. Herds of hadrosaurs and horned dinosaurs browse at the woodland edge, while agile dromaeosaurs and larger tyrannosaur-grade hunters patrol the same corridors. During this time, hominins occupy the margins of these interactions. They move between patches of trees, dry stream beds, and rocky outcrops, always watching the open ground where a sudden charge or a sweeping tail could be fatal. Because of this, vigilance becomes as important as strength. To early hominins, large herbivorous dinosaurs are first understood as moving terrain features rather than potential partners. A resting sauropod is a hill that blocks wind and line of sight. A migrating hadrosaur herd is a shifting wall that must be navigated around, not through. As a result, routes across the savanna are drawn in memory around dinosaur paths, wallows, and favored feeding grounds. Predators, in contrast, are experienced as existential threats. The silhouette of a large theropod on a ridge is enough to freeze a group, trigger alarm calls, and send juveniles toward thicker cover. Hominins, however, bring distinctive advantages into this dinosaur planet. Their forward-facing eyes provide precise depth perception, allowing them to judge the distance of a charging ceratosaur or the gap between themselves and a trampled zone. Dexterous hands can grip stones, broken branches, and later shaped tools. Over time, this process of handling and modifying objects turns the surrounding crust, bones, and vegetation into an extended defensive system. Social learning means that one close encounter, survived by chance, becomes a shared lesson about how fast a predator closes ground or how far a tail can swing. Opportunism quickly follows observation. Hominins begin to trail distant carnivores, arriving at kills after the main feeding frenzy has ended. Scavenging from dinosaur carcasses provides dense packages of meat and marrow that reshape diet and behavior. They also learn that following herbivore herds often leads to water, trampled paths through dense vegetation, and early warning of approaching danger. A sudden ripple of tension through a hadrosaur group, a shift in head posture, or the tight clustering of juveniles becomes a signal to move or hide. reading dinosaur body language becomes a quiet specialty. Raised crests, flared frills, and changes in vocalization patterns are mapped onto outcomes: charge, retreat, or indifference. Because of this, hominins begin to predict when a territorial display will remain a warning and when it will escalate into attack. Before any idea of companionship can emerge, there is this long apprenticeship in observation. Friendship, if it ever comes, rests on this foundation of understanding. Long before hominins dream of taming dinosaurs, they have already become careful students of their behavior, building mental maps of a shared world that is dangerous, but increasingly intelligible. Around the night fires, this apprenticeship deepens. Darkness changes how the shared landscape is sensed. When the last light fades from the western sky, distant calls begin to carry across the plains, deep, resonant bellows of sauropod herds, the honking choruses of hadrosaurs, the sharp, cutting cries of hunting theropods. Against the stars, vast shapes pass like moving hills, their long necks crossing familiar constellations. The planet's surface becomes a sounding board, and early humans listen. During this time, sound and shadow start to function like a second kind of daylight. Hunter bands learn that a certain rhythm of footfalls on dry ground signals a calm, walking herd, while irregular pounding waves of vibration indicate a stampede. A lone repeated call in the distance may mean a separated juvenile, while layered overlapping calls suggest a large organized group. This process turns the night from a formless danger into a map made of echoes, timing, and remembered patterns. At dawn, those patterns are checked against the ground. Tracking becomes a cognitive revolution. In soft riverbank mud, sauropod footprints the size of basins hold rainwater and fallen leaves. Smaller three-toed impressions of hadrosaurs and theropods cross and recross them. Early humans begin to read depth, spacing, and direction. Deep prints and scattered edges mark a running herd, even spacing marks steady travel, and overlapping layers reveal which group passed first. Because of this, dinosaurs slowly shift in perception from unpredictable monsters into moving systems that can be anticipated. Dung, trampled ferns, and stripped branches add more information. Fibrous droppings full of half-chewed plant matter indicate relaxed feeding. Crushed nests of small reptiles or torn carcasses signal a recent predator passage. Over time, these details are combined in memory. Herd size, travel corridors, and likely resting sites are inferred long before the animals appear. In effect, a mental map of dinosaur behavior is being formed across generations. This is also the beginning of a kind of proto-ethology. Certain hadrosaur herds are noted as calmer, tolerating closer human presence near waterholes, while others spook at the slightest sound. Some theropod packs are recognized as relentless followers of tracks, others as opportunists that abandon a trail quickly. Individual animals stand out. A one-eyed tyrannosaur that favors one side when turning, a sauropod with a twisted tail, a hadrosaur matriarch with a distinctive scarred crest. In many parts of Earth today, hunter-gatherer societies hold detailed knowledge of particular elephant families, whale pods, or deer herds. In this alternate prehistory, similar cultural memory forms around dinosaur lineages. Stories fix the routes of specific sauropod columns, the seasonal return of a certain hadrosaur group, the hunting style of a familiar raptor pack. Knowledge is not only personal, it is stored in language, song, and ritual. From this growing understanding come the first cautious experiments in influence. Fires are placed along one side of a valley to gently push a herd's path towards safer ground. Sudden drumming on hollow logs startles predators away from a carcass. Piles of discarded plant matter are left near a waterhole, and over many nights, certain herbivores begin to pause there. Are these animals being herded, or are humans simply learning to ride the edges of their choices? The line is thin, And in the next stage of this history, it will begin to blur even further. In this fragile balance along the water's edge, a few kinds of dinosaurs begin to stand out. Among the mixed herds that visit the same rivers and floodplains as human groups, mid-sized herbivores become the earliest, if reluctant, partners. Hadrosaur-like grazers with broad beaks and strong social bonds, and small ceratopsians with short frills and moderate temperaments often gather where the ground is soft and the plants are thick. During this time, their daily movements start to shape human choices. These herds offer a moving shield. When large predators scan the open plains, they tend to focus on the densest mass of meat. Human bands learn to travel just outside that living wall, close enough to benefit from many watchful eyes, but far enough to avoid being trampled. This process creates a loose ring around the animals. Fires lit at night along the outer margin send flickering light and heat across the surface of the camp. Because of this, smaller theropods and scavengers hesitate, unwilling to cross both the noise of humans and the unfamiliar glow. Over time, certain individuals within the herds begin to notice patterns. The strange primates shout, rattle objects, and strike sparks from stones. Yet they do not charge or bite. They leave behind bones with scraps of tendon, piles of wilted plant matter, and ash rich in salts leached from burned vegetation. Noses sensitive to mineral traces guide hadrosaur snouts and ceratopsian beaks back to the same abandoned hearths. As a result, some animals start to linger a little longer at the edge of human activity. This repeated exposure slowly reduces fear. A juvenile hadrosaur that has heard human voices since its earliest history of following the herd reacts differently from an adult that remembers only sudden noise. It lifts its head, blinks, and watches rather than fleeing. At certain camps, elders resting near the fire toss unwanted stems toward these watchers. Children copy the gesture, sending handfuls of leaves or leftover roots skidding across the ground. This simple act becomes a form of proto-feeding, linking the sight and smell of humans with small but reliable rewards. The response is not uniform. Some animals shy away, others stand their ground, and a few step forward. One evening, as mist rises from a cooling river and insects hum in the reeds, a young ceratopsian breaks from its group. Guided by the memory of salt and scattered greens, it walks past the ring of discarded plant matter and stops just beyond the nearest fire. The humans fall silent. Heat from the flames wavers across its scaled face. Sparks drift upward like brief stars. For the first time, a dinosaur stands at the threshold of a human camp without panic. What happens in the next quiet moments will decide whether this remains a chance encounter or becomes the first deliberate bridge between their worlds. The firelight holds, the dinosaur does not flee, and for a brief moment, it is tempting to call this scene a friendship. But what does that word actually mean in nature? And what kind of relationship is even possible between a primate and a reptile from another age? In biology, a first distinction appears between taming and domestication. Taming happens when an individual wild animal learns to tolerate human presence, accept food, or follow simple cues. A wolf pup raised by hand can grow into a calm companion. Yet its offspring, born without that training, return to wild behavior. Domestication, in contrast, is a long genetic partnership across many generations. Through this process, humans select for reduced fear, flexible behavior, and cooperation until a new form emerges. Dogs did not just learn different habits. Over time, their bodies, brains, and life cycles shifted away from wolves as a result of this shared history. Human language adds another layer with the term friendship. In animals, this word maps onto patterns that can be measured: attachment, trust, play, and shared problem solving. Elephants that wait for injured herd members, corvids that remember individual human faces, and some primates that groom preferred partners all show stable social bonds. In a human-dinosaur world, similar signals would be expected. A hadrosaur that regularly returns to a camp, lowers its head to allow harnessing, and chooses to remain near familiar voices in the presence of danger would be displaying more than simple tolerance. However, not every impressive animal on the planet can travel this path. Only a small fraction of large species has ever been domesticated. Horses, cattle, and camels succeeded where zebras, many deer, and most large carnivores did not. Diet, breeding behavior, social structure, and temperament all set hard limits. During this time, even with advanced tools, humans would still face those same biological boundaries when approaching dinosaurs. Researchers studying domestication highlight several recurring traits. Ideal candidates live in herds with clear dominance hierarchies, so a human handler can occupy a leadership role. They eat a flexible diet that human agriculture can support. They reproduce quickly enough for selective breeding to act within historical time. And they show a relatively low tendency to panic, allowing training to continue under stress. Because of this, certain dinosaur groups stand out. Large herbivores that already moved in organized herds, such as many hadrosaurs and some smaller sauropods, align closely with these criteria. In contrast, solitary, slow-breeding apex predators, even intelligent theropods, would remain far more difficult to shape into reliable partners. A pattern interrupt appears here in the story. The question is no longer simply whether humans can survive beside dinosaurs, but which species can cross the threshold from wary neighbor to genuine collaborator. As the fire dies down and the first encounter continues, another, deeper inquiry forms. Among the many lineages that once walked the ancient continents, which dinosaurs are not just manageable presences on the landscape, but true candidates to become humanity's closest non-human partners on Earth's changing surface? Millions of years ago in this alternate history, the great herbivores of the dinosaur age would not simply be background giants on the continents. They would become the first candidates for partnership, shaping fields, roads, and even battle lines. Among them, several lineages stand out as especially suited to move from wary coexistence to structured domestication. Hadrosaurs, the adduct-billed dinosaurs, form the clearest starting point. Fossil bone beds show dense herds, with adults and juveniles preserved together, indicating complex social behavior and long-term group cohesion. Many species carried elaborate crests connected to nasal passages, turning the head into a resonant chamber. During this time, those crests likely produced low, far-carrying calls, allowing herds to coordinate movement and warn of danger. Because of this, early human communities could treat hadrosaur groups as living grazing engines and alarm systems at the same time. A few trained lead animals, conditioned to respond to simple sound cues, might redirect entire herds across the landscape. Over time, such herds could be guided along seasonal routes, much like later pastoral systems on Earth's surface. In open steppe regions, light-framed hadrosaurs might even serve as riding animals for short distances, their broad backs adapted with simple harnesses. A village listening for the sudden change in herd vocalizations would gain vital seconds of warning before large predators approached. This process would tie human survival directly to the sensory world of these vocal herbivores. Ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs, present a different opportunity. Heavily built bodies, neck frills, and prominent horns suggest both defense and display, with strong social signals inside the herd. Territorial behavior and intraspecific combat would pose dangers at first. Yet herd structure also implies clear dominance hierarchies. By selectively favoring calmer, less reactive individuals, human groups could, over generations, shift entire lineages toward tractable temperaments. As a result, some populations might become living engines for plowing dense soils, hauling timber, or carrying armored platforms into conflict. In forest margins and floodplain farms, a pair of trained ceratopsians could push over small trees, drag logs, and open new fields, acting as living bulldozers. war leaders might mount howdah-like structures on their backs, using the animal's natural tendency to face threats head-on as a strategic advantage. The same horns that once clashed in mating contests would now anchor harnesses and protective armor. A third pathway involves smaller sauropods, or dwarf descendants of once giant lineages. Their immense size creates logistical challenges, enormous food demands, slow reproduction, and infrastructure capable of supporting many tons of moving biomass. Yet in broad river valleys or coastal plains, humans might harness them as living tractors and mobile fortresses. Caravans could travel with semi-domesticated sauropods, carrying supplies, lifting heavy stones, and serving as elevated lookouts above tall vegetation. Across all these groups, herd behavior and imprinting become central mechanisms. When young herbivores imprint on consistent caretakers, humans can insert themselves into existing dominance hierarchies, using a small number of trained leaders to steer entire herds. Over time, this would produce specialized cultures, steppe civilizations built around hadrosaur cavalry, forest farmers shaping land with horned dinosaurs, and river societies moving in the shadow of sauropod caravans. The next question is how predators, just as ancient and far more dangerous, would respond to a world where their traditional prey now marches under human guidance. Predators do not vanish simply because herbivores have been brought into harness. As human-guided herds spread across plains and river valleys, the largest carnivorous dinosaurs respond in ways that are both familiar and entirely new. In many regions, apex theropods fill the role that big cats and wolves once held, but on a scale that reshapes how settlements are formed, defended, and imagined. In open steppe environments, tyrannosaur analogs patrol vast territories that can stretch for hundreds of square kilometers. These animals often follow migratory routes, shadowing hadrosaur and sauropod movements, much as lions track ungulate herds. Their hunting strategies rely on ambush near river crossings, sudden charges from cover, and persistent trailing of injured prey. Because of this, early human communities quickly learn that any concentration of livestock is also a beacon to predators that can smell blood and decay from great distances. Defensive adaptations emerge as a direct response to this pressure. Camps and villages are raised on ridges, cliffs, or artificial mounds, lifting sleeping areas above the level of a lunging skull. Thorn barriers and sharpened wooden palisades line the outer edge of settlements, forming dense, painful walls that can turn a probing snout or deflect a testing bite. Fire perimeters, maintained as rings of smoldering brush or controlled torches, exploit the tendency of many large animals to avoid heat, smoke, and sudden light. Human groups also develop coordinated defense tactics modeled on earlier strategies against big cats. Night watch systems, rotating sentries, and signal calls spread alarm rapidly. Noisemakers, from suspended stones to stretched hide drums, create sudden, disorienting sound when a predator approaches. In some regions, organized spear lines and projectile teams are trained specifically to target eyes, joints, and the sensitive tissues of the mouth. Over time, this process produces cultures in which every adult understands both the behavior of local predators and the precise role they must take if one tests the boundary. The idea of turning such power into a direct ally is tempting, but large theropods resist true domestication. Their slow reproduction, extended growth, and intense territorial aggression mean that selective breeding is difficult and dangerous. Individual taming might occur when a young predator is captured, raised from an early age, and conditioned to accept human presence. In rare states or empires, such animals could be used as instruments of warfare or spectacle, but even then, handlers operate with constant risk, and lineages are short-lived. Smaller, more intelligent theropods offer a different path. Raptor and troodontid analogs, with quicker life cycles and higher cognitive abilities, can form semi-stable working relationships with humans. During this time, some societies refine techniques similar to falconry, using food rewards, social bonding, and controlled breeding to create hunting partners that flush game, scout dense forests, or control burrowing pests around fields. These animals remain dangerous, yet their size and flexibility make cooperation more reliable than with giant carnivores. As a result, most cultures regard the largest predators not as potential pets, but as powerful neighbors that define the edge of the human world. Their presence shapes religion, with guardian deities or underworld beings modeled on jaws and claws, and it influences policy, as border zones and migration corridors are left deliberately wild. The next stage in this shared history asks how cities, trade networks, and long-distance travel adapt when the frontier is marked not by lines on a map, but by the territories of creatures that have ruled the continents since long before humans formed their first villages. In this layered landscape of human and dinosaur territories, the sky adds a second map. Above forests, coasts, and city walls, pterosaurs trace invisible corridors. Some are small insect hunters, flitting over fields like living kites. Others are long-winged fish eaters, riding ocean winds the way ancient sailors once watched seabirds. Together they create an aerial dimension that human societies quickly learn to read and then to reshape. Pterosaurs are not birds, yet their presence recalls familiar partnerships. During this time, different lineages fill distinct roles. Tiny, agile insectivores can launch from rooftops and cliff ledges, darting between towers. Medium-sized coastal forms with sturdy shoulders and versatile diets become the focus of early training. The truly giant ocean soarers, adapted to long glides over open water, remain more difficult to handle, but their endurance tempts ambitious cultures that look outward across the seas. The biology of these animals sets strict boundaries. Their wings are membranes stretched over elongated fingers, anchored to light, hollow bones. This makes them strong in the air but fragile on the ground. Heavy armor or bulky cargo would crush joints and ribs. Specialized diets add another constraint. Many pterosaurs are tied to fish runs, shoreline rookeries, or insect swarms. As a result, only robust, generalist species that can tolerate varied prey and occasional fasting prove suitable for long-term partnership, and even these require careful management of nesting ledges and breeding cliffs. Along a tectonically active island arc, a maritime republic takes the lead in solving these challenges. Its harbors open toward warm currents, where fish are abundant, and tall sea cliffs ring natural bays. Here, generations of handlers learn to raise pterosaur chicks alongside human children, mapping each species' temperament and range. Trained flyers carry sealed messages between islands, scout sea lanes for storms and predators, and guide convoys across open water when the horizon shows only sky and ocean. Because of this, the Republic gains a decisive advantage in trade, diplomacy, and warfare, sensing distant movements long before sails or dust plumes appear at the edge of human vision. This process echoes earlier chapters in human history on another Earth. Homing pigeons once carried military orders across battlefields. Ravens in some cultures served as semi-wild messengers and camp followers. Falconry bound raptors and handlers into precise working teams. Over time, similar principles emerge here. Selective breeding for orientation, calmness and recall, ritualized feeding to reinforce routes, and a careful respect for the animal's limits. In the great ports of this alternate planet, the skyline becomes part of the transport network. Stone towers and wooden masts rise not only for defense and sails, but as anchor points for perches, landing beams, and signal fires. Flocks of trained pterosaurs glide between them, their shadows crossing tiled roofs and market squares. Air lanes form above canals and avenues, while restricted corridors hang over government districts and military docks. The vertical space of the city turns into a layered infrastructure of messages, scouts, and ceremonial flights. Yet as more cultures adopt sky partners and extend their reach, a new question emerges. Who controls the information that moves above the continents? And how far will ground-bound powers go to command the air? Control of the air quickly becomes a political question, but another frontier resists ownership almost entirely. Beyond the harbors and river mouths, the sea holds its own ancient lineages. Survivors from the Mesozoic that never stepped onto city streets yet still shape human decisions along the coast. These marine reptiles are not dinosaurs in the strict scientific sense. Plesiosaurs with long necks and paddle limbs, mosasaurs with powerful tails and double-hinged jaws, and broad-bodied pliosaurs all trace separate branches of the reptile tree. Yet during this time in this altered Earth history, some lineages persist beyond the classic end Cretaceous boundary, sharing the planet with early human societies that cluster along productive continental shelves. From the beginning, the constraints on domestication at sea are severe. Large predators spend nearly their entire lives offshore, far from any settlement. Breeding takes place in deep or distant waters that humans cannot reach. Feeding requires entire schools of fish or marine reptiles, so each individual represents a moving concentration of danger. Over time, it becomes clear that the very features that made these animals successful hunters make them resistant to the kind of close control seen on land. Because of this, coastal cultures develop a different strategy. Instead of trying to capture and breed the ocean's hunters, they attempt to shape behavior at the margins. Certain coves, river mouths, and rocky points become ritual feeding sites where offal from fisheries and beached carcasses are delivered at regular times. This process creates predictable attractors in the water, drawing local plesiosaurs or smaller mosasaurs away from main boat lanes and anchorage grounds. In some regions, generations of fishers learn the seasonal patterns of particular animals that return to the same bays. Names are given, songs are composed, and carved markers along the shore record sightings and attacks. The relationship remains asymmetric and dangerous. A missed feeding, a poor fishing year, or a storm that scatters carcasses can shift hunting back toward fragile wooden hulls in a single season. Yet as a result, certain coasts experience fewer sudden strikes, and a fragile form of managed coexistence emerges. There are rare, unsettling exceptions. In narrow fjords and fortified estuaries, ambitious rulers experiment with semi-training. Carcasses are chained near harbor mouths, bells are rung before feeding, and boats with distinctive hull patterns are allowed to pass unharmed, while others are harassed with thrown stones and noise. Over decades, one or two large mosasaurs may begin to associate particular sounds and silhouettes with food, turning into living siege weapons that can be guided, though never fully commanded. These marine allies remain closer to storms than to stables. They cannot be saddled, rarely tolerate proximity, and often vanish for years. Their loyalty is to hunger and migration routes, not to banners. In this way, the partial bonds at sea stand in sharp contrast to the deep generational partnerships forming on land, where herding herbivores and intelligent small theropods are slowly shaped into true companions. The next stages of this story unfold not on the waves, but across fields, forests, and the crowded streets of growing continental empires. On the great continents where human settlements press against dinosaur migration routes, a new kind of landscape begins to appear. Instead of scattered camps that rise and vanish with the seasons, long arcs of fire pits, dung-darkened meadows, and worn pathways trace the movements of vast herds. What happens when a mobile hunting band decides not just to follow these animals, but to shape where they go? During this time, some groups that once tracked hadrosaur or small sauropod herds for meat and hides begin to linger at favorite crossings and river bends. They learn the timing of calving grounds and the safest distances from nervous adults. Over time, their camps return to the same clearings, then stay through an entire season, then through several. Semi-sedentary rings of shelters form along the corridors of dinosaur movement, much like early reindeer cultures on the cold margins of the modern planet. This shift depends on subtle control rather than fences. Salt-rich clays are dug from certain outcrops of the crust and piled into deliberate salt licks that draw herds back to predictable spots. Controlled burns are set on surrounding hillsides where fire runs through dry grass and low shrubs, then retreats, leaving a flush of tender regrowth that herbivores prefer. Because of this, grazing pressure can be steered like a slow current, away from sacred groves or early crop fields and toward safer valleys. Water becomes another instrument. Simple stone-lined channels and shallow dams are built along streams, guiding flow toward basins that hold green vegetation even in the dry season. This process concentrates both animals and people around reliable pools. Among the herds, certain calmer individuals are singled out as led animals. From an early age, they are rewarded with mineral blocks, gentle contact, and rhythmic sounds. Over time, these leads learn to respond to rattles, drums, and flag motions, and when they turn, dozens or hundreds of others follow. The combined weight of dinosaur bodies transforms the surface. Hooves and broad feet churn the upper soil, break crusted ground, and press seeds into place. Manure falls in continuous lines, feeding dense grasses and flowering plants. As a result, dark, nutrient-rich pasture belts form like living roads across the land. Villages, gardens, and later walled towns are established along these belts, taking advantage of fertile fields that are, in a sense, co-created by humans, dinosaurs, and the planet's own cycles of rain and heat. Within these communities, social roles begin to specialize. Skilled herders who can read tail flicks and vocalizations gain influence because a misjudged panic can crush a harvest. Dino healers learn to clean wounds, set broken limbs with woven splints, and use aromatic resins from local forests to calm stressed animals. Breeders keep careful memory and later marks of lineages that are more trainable, more disease-resistant, or better suited to pulling primitive sledges and stone-dragging frames. Young people raised along these corridors push the relationship further. Some climb onto the backs of the most docile hadrosaurs or plated herbivores during rest periods, first as a dare, then as a quiet experiment. A few families begin to accept this, allowing short rides between nearby grazing patches. It is a small change in daily habit, but it hints at something far larger. In the generations that follow, these tentative riders will turn herding paths into strategic highways, and the gentle lead animals at the front of the herd will become the foundation of the first true dinosaur cavalry. Those first riders, swaying on the backs of patient hadrosaurs, mark more than a change in travel. They signal a shift in how entire settlements must be shaped. When working dinosaurs become part of daily life, the narrow, winding paths of early villages no longer function. Streets begin to widen, harden, and realign around the stride of giants. In the earliest cities of this alternate Earth, the main avenues are not cobbled lanes sized for human feet, but packed earth corridors pressed flat by constant dinosaur traffic. Repeated passes from broad ceratopsian hooves and the columnar feet of small sauropods compact the ground, while engineers add layers of gravel and stone to resist erosion. In places where heavy herds regularly move, reinforced stone paving is laid down, with deep foundations that spread the weight into the underlying crust. This process turns central roots into long, shallow troughs of smoothed rock, guiding both animals and people along predictable paths. Around these arteries, specialized infrastructure slowly forms. City gates rise higher and wider, framed with heavy timber and stone buttresses to admit horned faces and high-set eyes. Shaded dino barns appear just inside the walls, their roofs supported by thick pillars and their floors sloped for drainage. At major intersections, large watering troughs are built into the corners, fed by gravity-driven channels or simple pumps, so that working animals can drink without blocking the entire street. Above and beside all of this, elevated human-only walkways and balconies stretch between buildings. Because of this separation in height, pedestrians can move safely above the flow of tails, horns, and armored backs while still observing and directing the traffic below. Over time, zoning emerges as a deliberate response to noise, vibration, and risk. Some districts are designated for large dinosaurs, with broad turning spaces, loading yards, and ramps that lead directly into warehouses and granaries. Other quarters remain quiet, with posts or low barriers that physically prevent big animals from entering, allowing only small riding forms or no animals at all. Market zones cluster along the main dino routes, specializing in feed grains, medicinal clays, tack for necks instead of jaws, and layered armor plates designed to fit over frills, backs, and flanks. As a result, entire economies grow around maintaining the health and equipment of these reptilian partners. Engineering adapts as cities expand across rivers, hills, and defensive lines. Suspension bridges are designed with wide decks and redundant support cables or chains, their anchor blocks sunk deep into bedrock to distribute dinosaur weight into the crust below. Ramps replace narrow stairways at key crossings, allowing laden hadrosaurs or ceratopsians to climb gradually between terraces. Even the city walls change. Instead of simple vertical barriers, they incorporate internal galleries that open into integrated dino stables, so that trained animals can be deployed rapidly along the perimeter in times of danger. During this time, military planners begin to think of the wall not only as a passive shield, but as a platform from which living engines of force can emerge. From a distance, such a city appears almost organic, its broad avenues and high gates tracing the dimensions of the bodies that move through it. Up close, the impression is stronger. The ground carries a constant low tremor, a layered thunder of footsteps moving through the stone and soil. Calls, rumbles, and hisses echo between walls, blending with human voices into a single, continuous sound. The result is an urban landscape that feels alive not only with people, but with the steady presence of its reptilian citizens, shaping the rhythm of daily life and setting the stage for even more complex cooperation to come. In such cities, the same layered thunder that shapes daily life also reshapes conflict. When rival states arise on this altered Earth, they do not send out columns of horses. They field columns of dinosaurs. Warfare, like the planet itself, is rebuilt from the ground up. On broad plains, hadrosaur and iguanodont cavalry become the dominant force. These large herbivores, already adapted for long migrations, offer mass, endurance, and a raised vantage point that transforms open field tactics. A line of charging hadrosaurs, each several tons of muscle and bone, produces a pressure wave of sound and vibration that can break infantry morale before contact. Over time, commanders learn to coordinate their advances with drums, banners, and signal fires, turning what began as simple mounted movement into a disciplined, continent-shaping arm of war. Behind them, another class of dinosaur is reshaped for siege. Armored ceratopsians, with their heavy skulls and reinforced necks, are fitted with plate and wooden mantlets and driven toward walls as living battering rams. This process does not simply copy the role of early rams, it multiplies it. A ceratopsian can push, hook, and lift, tearing at gates and undermining stone foundations with repeated impacts. Because of this, defenders adapt. They dig deep ditches to trap the heavy animals, scatter iron caltrops to injure their feet, and develop fire-based deterrents that exploit the animal's fear of heat and smoke. Not all mounted forces are heavy. Elite units ride agile, medium-sized theropods whose balance and speed echo a fusion of historical light cavalry and trained war dogs. These predators move quietly over rough terrain, scout ahead of the main force, and launch sudden raids against supply lines. During this time, tactics emerge that use their sharp senses as much as their claws and teeth. Night patrols, ambushes in broken crustal uplands, and rapid shock charges against disordered infantry all become standard tools in the military repertoire. Supporting such armies requires a logistical system that is as transformative as the animals themselves. Large dinosaur bodies demand tremendous quantities of forage and water. Campaign routes follow river systems and seasonal pastures, and states that can manage fodder, grain, and preserved feed gain a decisive advantage. Over time, specialized professions form: dinosaur quartermasters, trainers, and early veterinary experts who understand injuries to scales, joints, and internal organs. Their knowledge spreads along trade routes like any other strategic resource, binding distant regions into shared networks of care and control. As these practices mature, some polities begin to think on an imperial scale. They combine hadrosaur shock lines, ceratopsian siege columns, and theropod raiders into a single coordinated instrument of power. In such realms, breeding centers for prized bloodlines are guarded as closely as treasuries. The fate of continents starts to hinge on who commands certain herds and clutches. What happens when one empire finally perfects this living war machine, and no neighboring state can match its stable of reptilian soldiers? When one empire finally appears unbeatable, the real point of failure often lies far from its walls and weapons. In a world where the fate of continents depends on dinosaur herds and clutches, the greatest vulnerability is not an enemy army, but the living foundations of that power. What happens when those foundations begin to fracture? In some eras of this alternate history, a quiet biological shift would be enough. A new respiratory disease moves through the great hadrosaur breeding grounds, carried by small migratory theropods and biting insects. During this time, entire cavalry regiments find their mounts coughing, slowing, and then collapsing in the mud. Plague among draft sauropods leaves terraces unplowed and siege towers stranded. Because of this, the apparent strength of a dino-powered empire can evaporate in a single campaigning season, much as horse plagues once paralyzed early modern armies. Climate would add its own pressure. A series of failed monsoons dries the lowland wetlands, where herds once formed dense, predictable gatherings. Over time, exhausted animals must travel farther between grazing grounds and water, losing mass and stamina. This process weakens both military and agricultural systems at once. Armored ceratopsian lancers cannot charge if their mounts are half-starved. Quarry operations grind to a halt when ankylosaur teams can no longer drag stone. The planet's shifting belts of heat and rainfall turn from background conditions into active agents of political collapse. Another, more unsettling failure point lies in animal agency. In regions where handlers drive their reptiles past endurance, patterns of panic and resistance begin to appear. A single mishandled tyrannosaur in a siege park, struck once too often with heated irons, bolts through its enclosure and triggers a cascading stampede. Entire siege columns are crushed under their own living engines. In coastal cities, overworked pterosaurs suddenly refuse to launch in storm winds, dropping mail pouches and military orders into the streets. Historical accounts of horse riots and elephant panics suggest that such events would not be rare anomalies, but recurring shocks that force societies to reconsider training and restraint. Memories of these disasters would accumulate. As a result, some cultures codify early welfare rules that read like a mixture of legal code and prayer. Maximum marching distances for sauropod columns are inscribed on stone tablets. Religious taboos forbid striking the head crests of hadrosaurs, which are said to hear the planet through resonant bone. Sacrificial rituals shift away from valuable working dinosaurs toward symbolic offerings because of this rising sense that abusing such partners invites both economic ruin and divine anger. Over long periods, the most stable dino-human civilizations are not those with the largest herds, but those that treat their animals less as replaceable tools and more as co-workers whose needs shape law, architecture, and strategy. Does an empire redesign its roads, storehouses, and battle plans around what its dinosaurs can safely endure? If it does, its power can persist across epidemics and climate swings. If it does not, the next strike of disease, drought, or rebellion in the paddocks will reset the balance of continents once again, setting the stage for new experiments in living with giants rather than merely commanding them. Across this alternate Earth, the question is not only how empires use dinosaurs, but how civilizations explain them. When a continent's power depends on herds that shake the crust with every step, belief systems bend around those footsteps. Temples, myths, and daily rituals all begin with a simple, unsettling image: giants that share the same valleys, rivers, and skies, yet answer to no human law. In many regions, early animist traditions form around these shared landscapes. Vast sauropod herds moving along ancient migration corridors are seen as the walking outline of land spirits, tracing invisible borders between sacred and ordinary ground. Certain individuals, perhaps a white-patched matriarch or an unusually scarred bull, are treated as avatars of mountain or river deities. During this time, a herd's arrival at seasonal wetlands might be understood as the planet itself breathing, as if the mantle's hidden heat were rising through muscle and bone to renew the surface. This spiritual framework shapes concrete practices. Cities that formed near nesting beaches of hadrosaurs or ceratopsians hold annual festivals timed to the first hatchlings breaking through the sand. Processions move alongside the herds at a careful distance, priests scattering mineral salts or crushed shells as offerings. In some cultures, particular color patterns, deep red frills, pale blue feathers, or jet black scales are marked as untouchable. To harm such an animal is taboo, believed to fracture the invisible shield that protects the community from drought, earthquake, or disease. A specialized priestly or shamanic caste emerges to interpret what dinosaurs seem to signal. This process of reading the landscape now includes reading the herds. Long-distance migrations that shift by only a few days are taken as omens of delayed monsoon winds. A sudden change in the calls of coastal pterosaurs might be heard as a warning of approaching storms. Rare color morphs in predatory theropods become signs of dynastic change, recorded alongside eclipses and comets in temple archives. Because of this, theology turns into politics. Some traditions argue that dinosaurs are lesser beings, powerful but spiritually incomplete, placed on Earth as living tools. In those regions, exploitation is framed as duty. Harnessing sauropod strength or theropod ferocity is said to complete a divinely ordered hierarchy. Other philosophies insist that humans and dinosaurs are equal partners, different expressions of the same sacred life. Here, protective laws, elaborate burial mounds for fallen herd animals, and strict limits on hunting are justified as religious obligations. A few radical schools go further and claim that the great herds and soaring flyers are spiritual superiors. According to these teachings, the oldest lineages remember an earlier history of the planet, carrying a memory that predates human language. Over time, such ideas harden into legal codes that place certain valleys, cliffs, or coastal shelves entirely under dinosaur guardianship, off-limits to human settlement. These sacred views do not go unchallenged. As more secular, technologically advanced societies rise, they begin to treat dinosaurs as biological machines, systems of muscle, bone, and nervous tissue that can be modeled, enhanced, and replaced. When one culture blesses a hatchling while another patents its genome, conflict is inevitable, setting the stage for future clashes over whose vision of a shared Earth will prevail. When one culture patents a genome, another culture inevitably asks what else can be owned. In many regions, the answer becomes clear on the sand of vast arenas, where living dinosaurs are turned into instruments of public spectacle. Here, the fusion of biological power and human engineering creates a new kind of theater, one that reflects deeper tensions beneath the surface of shared Earth. In the largest city-states, Colosseum-like structures rise from the crust, their stone rings echoing with the sounds of metal, sand, and bone. Trained theropods, often mid-sized but fast and agile, are fitted with armor and signal harnesses, then released against each other or against human champions. During this time, analogies to gladiatorial games and bullfighting are impossible to ignore. Handlers use scent lures, sound cues, and controlled hunger to shape behavior. As a result, the crowd witnesses contests that appear spontaneous, yet are carefully managed to balance danger with predictability. Not all regions accept lethal combat as the highest form of entertainment. Over time, less violent sports emerge using the same animals in very different ways. Herd-bred hadrosaurs, already selected for temperament and endurance, become racing mounts. Long oval tracks are carved into valley floors, and teams design lightweight saddles and biosympathetic reins to guide the animals without crippling them. In coastal cities, trained pterosaurs perform aerial shows, threading between towers and cliff faces in synchronized flight. Elsewhere, obstacle courses bring human-dinosaur teams together, asking them to navigate shifting gates, moving platforms, and scent-marked paths that test memory, agility, and trust. This growing entertainment economy deepens social stratification. Elites treat rare or exotic breeds as living symbols of status. Ceratopsians with unusual horn patterns, melanistic raptors, or diminutive but highly intelligent troodontids are displayed in invitation-only events where the emphasis is on rarity rather than risk. Because of this, ownership of particular lineages becomes tied to lineage of another kind: noble houses, corporate dynasties, and priestly orders. In contrast, commoners gather around local tracks, riverfront performance grounds, and temporary arenas, betting modest sums on familiar animals whose names are known across neighborhoods. Moral debate grows alongside profit. As some theropods and maniraptoran species demonstrate complex problem-solving and social learning, certain cultures begin to argue that these animals occupy a gray zone between livestock and person. This process is uneven. In one region, philosophers compare their cognition to that of early hominins. In another, ritual specialists declare that any creature capable of recognizing itself in reflective water must be shielded from deliberate cruelty. Early animal rights movements form, demanding limits on arena deaths, mandatory rest periods, and the retirement of individuals that show signs of trauma. In this contested space, entertainment becomes a diagnostic tool for civilization. How much pain is acceptable for spectacle? Which species are considered mere resources and which are granted emerging legal identities? The answers vary across continents, but they all point forward. As legal codes slowly adapt and scientific understanding of dinosaur minds deepens, the arenas, tracks, and aerial theaters foreshadow broader reforms, hinting that future conflicts will not only concern land and technology, but the very definition of who on this planet is entitled to dignity. As legal ideas begin to stretch around dinosaur minds, images and stories move even faster. Long before laws are written on clay or paper, the shared life of humans and dinosaurs is recorded on rock walls, carved bone, and memorized songs. Culture becomes the second landscape in which these animals live. In early shelters and canyon overhangs, pigments are pressed into the crust of the earth. Cave paintings show specific companions, not generic beasts. A broad-headed ceratopsian appears again and again beside the same human figure, marked with a distinctive spiral on its frill. Nearby, a sweeping mural follows a village's history: hadrosaur herds crossing a river, a night attack by feathered raptors, and a final scene where a giant sauropod braces its body against floodwaters to hold a collapsing bridge of logs and stone. Over time, these visual records turn into narrative cycles, read by elders the way later generations will read books. Sculpture and relief carving extend this process into 3 dimensions. In one region, basalt pillars are shaped into charging ceratopsian war mounts, their horns inlaid with copper to catch the light of ceremonial fires. Elsewhere, river clay is formed into small figures of a hadrosaur, bending its neck protectively over clustered human dwellings, a reminder of a remembered rescue during an ancient storm. On coastal cliffs, chiseled friezes show raptor silhouettes interwoven with human hands, signaling both alliance and danger. Around these images, folk tales crystallize. Storytellers speak of a legendary ceratopsian whose line is said to carry the courage of an entire valley, of a faithful hadrosaur that once dragged wounded children to higher ground when the river rose without warning, and of a raptor trickster who changes sides in every tale. During this time, such figures explain fortune and misfortune, loyalty and betrayal. They also encode practical knowledge, which calls signal alarm, which tail movements precede a charge, which nesting grounds must never be disturbed. Music and poetry draw directly from dinosaur sound and motion. Drums are stretched with cured skin from naturally deceased animals, tuned to echo the deep, pulsed calls of sauropod communication. Bone flutes carved from hollow limb bones imitate the high, reedy cries of juvenile hadrosaurs lost in fog. Dancers wrap themselves in shed feathers and patterned scales, then move in spirals that follow herd circling or the bounding rhythm of raptor packs. Because of this, ritual performance becomes a rehearsal of coexistence, training bodies to anticipate the weight, speed, and breadth of neighboring giants. Different regions highlight different partners, creating distinct dino identities. Mountain societies paint and carve ceratopsians into every gait and standard, grounding their sense of strength in the animal's mass and frilled shields. River delta cultures favor hadrosaurs in their iconography, linking community survival to migration routes and seasonal grazing on flooded plains. Forest peoples embroider raptor feathers onto cloaks and masks, honoring stealth and quick perception. As a result, local ecology and deep history are folded into symbols that can be recognized at a glance. Over time, these artistic and oral traditions prepare the way for something new. As scripts emerge and scholars begin to compare painted scenes with tracks, bones, and measured calls, mythic images start to merge with systematic observation. What happens when the same hand that once traced a heroic mural now draws a labeled diagram of a ceratopsian skull? The answer will reshape both science and story. The moment diagrams appear beside murals, the relationship with dinosaurs begins to change. In monasteries, palace schools, and desert observatories, early natural philosophers start to catalog the living giants that share their roads and fields. They measure limb bones, compare teeth, and note which species graze in open plains and which lurk at the forest edge. During this time, heroic titles such as Thunder Guardian slowly gain quieter companions. Large herbivore, low aggression, crested vocalizer. As records accumulate, observers notice patterns that do not fit the oldest legends. Hatchlings resemble their parents. Crest shapes vary within a herd, but follow family lines. Predators that myth once claimed could drink lightning instead rely on jaws, claws, and coordinated pack behavior. This process of careful description turns sacred stories into testable claims. When a storm passes without a weather dragon responding, some scholars begin to ask whether these beings are ancient spirits at all, or simply very old branches on the tree of life. Comparative anatomy emerges from this questioning. Philosophers lay the skeleton of a small theropod beside that of a familiar hunting dog and a trained horse. They trace the shared arrangement of limb bones, count vertebrae, and compare joints. Over time, similar exercises link bird wings to the feathered arms of agile raptors and connect heavy sauropod feet to the broader pattern of land vertebrates. The presence of living dinosaurs turns abstract deep time into something that walks through city gates every day. From these comparisons, early evolutionary thinking takes shape. If one valley keeps only horned dinosaurs with longer frills, and another favors shorter, heavier forms for pushing siege towers, differences appear within a few generations. breeding manuals for military stables and agricultural estates quietly become scientific documents. They record parentage, clutch size, coloration, speed trials, and pulling capacity. As a result, protogenetic ideas arise. Traits seem to pass through bloodlines. Rare features can be strengthened by careful pairing, and harmful tendencies can be reduced by culling. Because of this, the archives of empires fill with performance logs and lineage charts. A commander demands a line of hadrosaurs that do not panic at fire. A grain lord wants sauropods that mature faster on poorer soils. Successes and failures are written down, copied, and debated. Without using modern terms, scholars begin to distinguish inherited potential from training and innate temperament from environment. Not everyone accepts this new vision. In temple cities where dinosaurs are still paraded as living symbols of creation, religious authorities resist the idea that a revered ceratopsian can be measured, bred, or surgically treated like any other animal. Are humans altering sacred forms, or simply revealing the laws that shaped them? Public disputes flare when a priest forbids horn trimming for battle armor, and a royal engineer insists it is necessary for safety. This conflict becomes a turning point. Once dinosaurs are understood as organisms with bones, blood, and changeable traits, a further question appears almost unexpectedly. If their bodies can be guided by selective breeding, what happens when new tools allow direct redesign? The technological era will answer by reaching inside the very blueprint of these ancient companions. Once the idea of redesigning dinosaur bodies appears, the next question is how far technology can go before it makes muscles and bone obsolete. Imagine a landscape where steam rises beside grazing herds and iron rails thread through valleys already shaped by hadrosaur footprints. In this alternate history, the Industrial Revolution does not sweep away animal power in a single wave. Instead, it settles alongside it. During this time, early steam engines enter a world already dependent on large living engines. In the countryside, hadrosaurs still plow heavy soils, turning the surface of the earth much as they have for centuries. Within growing cities, medium-sized herbivores haul carts through narrow streets, moving grain, bricks, and people between districts. Steam locomotives appear first on long-distance routes, hauling freight across continents where even the strongest dinosaur would tire. As a result, steel tracks and living caravans operate in parallel rather than in direct competition. This mixed system encourages hybrid technologies that rarely emerge on the familiar version of the planet. Engineers design rail cars that can be coupled either to a locomotive or to a team of ceratopsians, allowing trains to roll into districts where smoke and sparks are restricted. Harness systems connect dinosaurs directly to geared winches and cranes, so that a single sauropod can lift beams into place, while steam engines power saws and drills nearby. Many factories are formed with stables built into their foundations, providing biological power as backup when boilers fail or fuel runs short. Because of this integration, economic tensions take on a very different form. Industrialists argue that steam and, later, internal combustion will free cities from the limits of fodder, rest, and disease. Guilds of dino handlers respond that trained animals are not just power sources, but complex investments with skills that machines cannot easily copy. This process creates negotiations over mixed work schedules, shared maintenance yards, and laws that require any new machine system to demonstrate clear advantages before replacing established dinosaur teams. These debates force societies to confront questions of safety and welfare earlier than in many human-only histories. Better harness design reduces chafing and spinal strain on large herbivores. Veterinary medicine becomes a central industrial science, studying tendons, lungs, and circulation under heavy loads and in polluted air. Legal codes begin to define maximum working hours, mandatory rest periods, and protections against dangerous factory layouts that might panic a multi-ton animal. Over time, The economic value of dinosaurs encourages stronger legal recognition of their status as partners rather than disposable tools. Yet steam and steel are only the beginning. As electrical grids spread and laboratories learn to read the chemical language of heredity, another possibility emerges. What if power is increased not only by building better engines, but by reshaping the animals themselves? The real revolution will come when electrification and biotechnology converge, allowing humans to reach past harness and machine into the deep blueprint of their ancient allies. As electrification and biotechnology begin to merge, the focus of this alternate Earth shifts from open fields and workshops to dense urban landscapes. In the largest megacities, planners must design not only for vehicles and pedestrians, but for herds, flocks, and solitary giants, whose presence reshapes every level of the built environment. The result is a layered city in which traffic becomes a living, three-dimensional system. At ground level, broad reinforced avenues carry the slow, constant movement of large dinosaurs. Separate lanes guide hadrosaur commuter caravans, armored ceratopsian freight lines, and occasional sauropod engineering teams that transport heavy materials through the urban crust. Raised barriers and embedded guidance rails keep these flows stable, while shock-absorbing pavements protect joints and distribute weight into the underlying mantle of foundations and support pillars. Mid-level, a second city has formed. Enclosed human walkways, tram lines, and light rail routes that cross above the herds, allowing rapid movement without interrupting the massive traffic below. Higher still, rooftops have been reshaped into platforms, perches, and glideways for pterosaur traffic. During this time, office towers and residential blocks are designed with stepped terraces and wind-calmed corridors that allow trained flyers to land, unload cargo, and launch again. Navigation beacons and light patterns guide flocks through narrow canyons of glass and concrete, in the same way that ancient coastal cliffs once directed their ancestors along prehistoric shores. Within this vertical framework, dinosaurs are integrated into everyday urban services. Scavenger teams of smaller theropods, carefully managed and tagged, move through designated alleys, collecting organic waste before it can rot, while specialized handlers direct them away from sensitive districts. In parks and green belts, compact herbivores act as living lawnmowers, cropping grass and low shrubs to maintain open sightlines and reduce fire risk. Hadrosaur-based emergency evacuation units wait in reinforced depots near transit hubs. When alarms sound, platforms lower and entire building populations can be moved along protected dino corridors toward higher ground or out of flood zones. Such density creates constant challenges of noise, pollution, and health. Deep collection channels beneath the streets carry dino waste toward biogas plants, where this process is turned into heat and power, rather than uncontrolled contamination. Specialized veterinary hospitals stand beside human clinics, sharing diagnostic laboratories that monitor cross-species disease risks. Zoning laws separate high-stress industrial areas from rest corridors because of this need to protect both human nervous systems and the complex social behavior of herd animals. Culturally, the megacity still remembers older traditions. Ancient seasonal festivals that once wound through small towns now unfold as illuminated processions along multi-level routes, with beloved dinosaur lineages draped in textiles, neon lights, and amplified music. Over time, each district develops favored herds and flocks, turning long-term breeding lines into symbols of neighborhood identity and continuity. Above and within it all, the digital layer thickens. Smartphones track individual animals in real time, schedule feeding windows, and flag early signs of illness or stress. Families follow the daily paths of familiar herds across the city map, while planners analyze this data to refine routes and breeding programs. As a result, the megacity becomes a testing ground for the next transformation, a world in which information, genes, and behavior will be linked as tightly as any harness. In the next phase, those linked harnesses leave the safety of the megacity and enter the battlefield. When industrial nations reach the age of tanks and jet aircraft, they do so on a planet where dinosaur units are already woven into military doctrine. War is reimagined as columns of armored vehicles advance beside armored hadrosaurs and ceratopsians, while shadows of pterosaurs cross the surface far ahead. During this time, combined arms tactics evolve around the strengths and limits of living bodies. Tanks dominate open plains, but dense forests, marshes, and broken volcanic terrain still favor sure-footed dinosaur cavalry. Long-necked sauropods carry bridge sections and artillery pieces across river valleys that would bog down machines. Smaller, fast theropods move along cliff faces and narrow ridges, slipping through terrain that heavy vehicles cannot reach, then marking paths for mechanized units that follow. Urban combat changes as military planners recognize that a dinosaur is both a weapon and a moving landscape feature. Ceratopsians, with broad frills and heavy skulls, are fitted with modular armor plates. These animals advance slowly down shattered streets, forming mobile cover for infantry behind their living shields. Because of this, city fighting becomes a careful choreography of hull-down tanks at intersections, rooftop snipers, and horned dinosaurs turning corners like walking barricades. Above them, pterosaurs serve as low-signature reconnaissance platforms. Their wings generate less distinct radar reflections than metal aircraft, and their bodies blend with flocks of civilian carriers already crossing the sky. This process allows commanders to map enemy positions without always revealing electronic emissions. Some pterosaurs carry light cameras and acoustic sensors. Others simply relay the trained signals of their riders, banking or calling in agreed patterns that transmit information without radio. In jungles, ruins, and tunnel networks, small theropods take on roles that machines cannot easily fill. Agile, intelligent forms descended from troodontid-like ancestors enter collapsed subway lines, cave complexes, and dense mangrove channels. They detect vibrations, scents, and heat from hidden positions, flushing opponents toward waiting infantry. Over time, elite units arise that pair human handlers with lineages of dinosaurs bred for night vision, quiet movement, and high trainability. Yet the modern battlefield exposes profound vulnerabilities. Artillery shells, cluster munitions, and automatic firearms can tear through muscle and bone as readily as metal. Chemical weapons burn eyes and lungs, lingering close to the ground where many dinosaurs breathe. As a result, military planners confront an ethical and practical dilemma. How far can a society push living partners into environments saturated with fire, gas, and shrapnel? Public opinion begins to shift when images of wounded or traumatized dinosaur veterans circulate across the planet. A blind ceratopsian, still turning protectively toward familiar voices, a pterosaur that refuses to take off after surviving a flak burst, a small theropod pacing endlessly in a rehabilitation pen. Such scenes reshape debates on war, animal rights, and the responsibilities of advanced civilizations. Anti-war movements merge with conservation campaigns, arguing that these lineages, shaped since the early history of Earth's continents, should not be consumed by industrial conflict. In response, and often in secret, militaries redirect funding toward a new frontier. Laboratories explore gene editing, neural interfaces, and remote control harnesses designed to override instinct and amplify obedience. The aim is to create enhanced dinosaur units that are more resistant to fear, easier to direct from a distance, and partially disconnected from their own choices. At this point, the partnership that formed over millions of shared days begins to blur. Are these still allies in battle? Or are they becoming something closer to guided missiles grown from ancient flesh? And what happens when the line finally disappears? At the moment the line between partner and weapon begins to disappear, a different question suddenly emerges. If some dinosaur allies can follow complex orders, remember faces, and even refuse commands, are they just living tools, or do they start to resemble another kind of person? Evidence from certain theropods and hadrosaurs would make this debate difficult to ignore. Troodontid-like hunters, with large brains and forward-facing eyes, solve puzzles to reach food, cooperate during hunts, and remember safe paths across dangerous terrain for many seasons. Hadrosaurs in long-lived herds develop layered vocal calls, use body posture to negotiate rank, and show coordinated defense around nests. During this time, observers would record problem-solving, tool use with simple objects, complex social communication, and long-term memory that spans years rather than days. Over time, these observations would move from field notes to courtrooms. In many regions, the first laws might treat dinosaurs as property, no different from vehicles or livestock. Elsewhere, their role as trained workers would push legal systems to classify them as a special kind of laborer, subject to contracts negotiated by human handlers. A hadrosaur that hauls stone for decades recognizes its coworkers and changes routes when bridges fail, challenges the idea that it is only equipment. At this point, a pattern interrupt appears in legal history. Courts on this planet have already faced similar arguments about great apes, dolphins, and elephants. Cognitive studies show that chimpanzees understand social rules, dolphins respond flexibly to symbols, and elephants recognize themselves in mirrors and mourn their dead. Because of this, some legal scholars argue that certain non-human animals should hold limited personhood, with protection against arbitrary confinement or harmful experiments. This process would likely repeat with intelligent dinosaur species. Philosophers and lawmakers might propose guardianship models, where a human acts not as an owner, but as a legal representative for a dinosaur's interests. Labor codes could require that working theropods choose among tasks they understand, receive rest, and be removed from dangerous environments, much as child labor laws once transformed human industry. International agreements might ban the use of specific high-cognition species in organized combat or invasive research, recognizing that fear and pain in these animals are not merely reflexes, but experienced states. Such frameworks would not remain abstract for long. As genetic engineering advances, scientists begin to enhance memory, alter aggression pathways, and reshape sensory worlds inside dinosaur brains. Editing vocal anatomy to support clearer speech-like calls, extending lifespan, or linking neural implants to remote commands turns ethical questions into urgent regulatory problems. When the same biotechnology that modifies crops now reaches into the minds of ancient lineages, societies must decide how far this power can extend before it breaks the fragile boundary between collaboration and control. And this decision will shape every experiment that follows. Genetic power does not stop at guiding behavior through implants. Once entire dinosaur genomes are sequenced, the relationship between humans and these ancient lineages enters a new phase. For the first time, the code that formed their bodies, their senses, and even their temperaments can be read line by line and deliberately altered. During this time, large comparative projects map the genomes of herding sauropods, armored ankylosaurs, agile theropods, and smaller bird-like forms. Patterns begin to appear. Specific clusters of genes correlate with calmer temperaments in herd leaders, with rapid juvenile growth in plains browsers, with resistance to respiratory disease in coastal populations, and with expanded forebrain regions in certain small predatory species. As a result, the old art of domestication is joined to a precise catalog of switches and dials inside the genome itself. Selective breeding does not disappear. It is upgraded. Long-lived lineages of war mounts, once chosen only by eye and experience, are now screened for alleles that reduce stress responses to noise and pain while preserving strength and spatial awareness. Hypoallergenic companion lineages are produced by editing keratin and skin protein genes, reducing dander and modifying feather microstructures so that dense urban populations can live alongside them without chronic inflammation. In agricultural regions, tendon, gut, and cartilage genes are tuned so that plow-pulling ceratopsians convert low-quality plant matter into sustained muscle power with less fatigue. Over time, entirely new morphs appear that never existed during the Mesozoic. House-sized sauropods are miniaturized through edits to growth hormone pathways and growth plate timing, producing long-necked browsers that fit within human architecture, yet retain the slow, sweeping grace of their giant ancestors. Feather-augmented display breeds are engineered with intensified pigment pathways and altered feather patterning, creating living banners for ceremonies, diplomacy, and territorial markers. Along transport routes and in mining complexes, glow-marked night workers carry genes from bioluminescent marine organisms, outlining horns, tails, or dorsal stripes with steady light so that their movements remain visible against the dark surface of the planet. This process generates significant ethical controversy. Designer dinosaurs become luxury symbols, with rare color morphs and exaggerated ornamentation traded at prices once reserved for art or land. Concerns grow that extreme limb shortening, cranial reshaping, or permanent luminescence may cause chronic pain or sensory overload that cannot be clearly expressed or measured. Because of this, regulatory bodies argue over acceptable limits, while ecologists warn that edited forms escaping into the wild could hybridize with feral populations, altering ecosystems as profoundly as past shifts in climate or the movement of continents. Against this background of enhancement and ornament, one proposal stands apart. If genes linked to cognition and social learning can be identified, could they be modestly strengthened, not for labor, but for dialogue? The first serious project to uplift dinosaur intelligence begins as a question about shared language, memory, and culture, and it will test how far this new partnership is willing to go. The first attempts to answer that question do not begin with words, but with signals. When uplifted troodontids and attentive hadrosaurs enter controlled research habitats, entire laboratories are built around their senses. Arrays of microphones, high-speed cameras, and neural interfaces map calls, postures, and eye movements. During this time, machine learning systems compare these patterns across herds and hunting bands, searching for repeated structures that resemble grammar. This process links three main streams of data. Tiny, non-invasive neural caps record activity in regions tied to hearing and social attention. Vocalization analysis tracks pitch, rhythm, and harmonics in bellows, trills, and low-frequency rumbles that pass easily through air and ground. Gesture recognition follows tail angles, crest displays, and subtle claw movements. Over time, correlations emerge. A certain rising call plus a head tilt and tail sweep reliably precede movement toward water, while other combinations predict alarm, curiosity, or play. Researchers respond by introducing symbolic languages. Large visual glyphs are projected on walls. Simple tonal chimes represent food, rest, or danger. Colored light bars encode individuals and places. Because of this dense feedback, theropods begin to associate particular symbols with social outcomes they already value. A hadrosaur matriarch learns that touching a blue circle on a wall panel brings her injured calf to a quieter enclosure. A juvenile troodontid discovers that a spiral icon signals a puzzle feeder, not a restraint. Augmented reality then draws human perception into the same channel. Handlers wear transparent visors and lightweight vests that read heart rate, skin temperature, and directional gaze from nearby dinosaurs. As a result, a shifting overlay appears on the surrounding surface, calm green halos around resting animals, pulsing amber bands when tension rises, sharp red vectors when predatory focus locks onto a moving target. Simple icons float above individuals, translating likely meanings such as thirst, overstimulated, or seeking contact. Interactive devices deepen this exchange. Large touchscreens at herd level display arrays of symbols linked to actions, locations, or companions. Soundboards with pressure plates allow beaked snouts or clawed toes to trigger specific tonal sequences. Some lineages, especially smaller theropods with flexible forelimbs, adopt sign-like gestures, combining forearm sweeps and claw taps to reference tools, routes, or preferred handlers. In one documented case, a troodontid pair uses a shared panel to request a different nesting substrate, then cooperates with technicians to test several options. As these abilities spread, emotional consequences follow. Handlers who once treated dinosaurs as living infrastructure begin to encounter clear expressions of attachment, boredom, and grief. A hadrosaur returning repeatedly to an inactive icon for a deceased herdmate forces a re-evaluation of loss. What does it mean when a long-term companion refuses a work symbol but selects rest again and again? Such choices hint at a broader upheaval. When translated panels appear in transport yards, training arenas, and even military staging grounds, some dinosaurs start using them to express opinions about noise levels, enclosure size, and risk. Their preferences do not always align with human plans. The moment these voices gain structure, the partnership must confront an unsettling question. If dinosaurs can state what they want, how long can older assumptions about ownership, labor, and war endure? As soon as dinosaur voices begin to organize, the built environment of the planet starts to change. Cities that once treated dinosaurs as extensions of infrastructure now have to treat them as residents. Over time, entire districts are redesigned so that intelligent species such as troodontids, advanced dromaeosaurs, and large social hadrosaurs have their own housing, public spaces, and governance halls linked directly to human councils. In these shared neighborhoods, scale is the first visible difference. Multi-level terraces allow hadrosaurs to rest on reinforced platforms, while humans occupy embedded apartments within the same structural frame. Broad ramps, sheltered gantries, and elevated walkways cross above streets where smaller theropods move in coordinated flows. During this time, local assemblies of dinosaur representatives meet in partially open forums, using vocalizations, gesture-based sign systems, and augmented translation devices to negotiate zoning, resource use, and noise limits with human officials. Infrastructure shifts from being managed for dinosaurs to being managed by them. Along major corridors, autonomous food dispensers recognize individual animals through scent and pattern, releasing measured rations of plant matter or prepared protein without handlers. This process reduces conflict over feeding and gives dinosaurs direct control over timing and location. Large enrichment parks are formed as layered landscapes, deep sand basins for digging, artificial rock ridges for climbing, and water channels calibrated for bathing sauropods and semi-aquatic forms. Transit systems also adapt. Ground networks include low-speed freight lanes, sized for ceratopsians, pulling modular cargo units that can be attached or released through simple lever actions. Elevated rail spines carry enclosed gondolas that some troodontids can request or route using tactile panels. In the air, trained pterosaur guilds interact with beacon towers that project sound and light codes, allowing them to choose safe corridors across the urban crust without dense human oversight. With these foundations, mixed species workplaces become normal rather than experimental. In construction, long-necked dinosaurs position prefabricated elements with precision, while human engineers monitor stress, vibration, and mantle-derived seismic activity through sensors embedded in the rising frame. Environmental management teams pair aquatic reptiles with human hydrologists to maintain reservoirs, flood channels, and coastal barriers. In creative industries, motion capture studios record full-body performances of agile theropods, translating their movement into new forms of dance, sculpture, and spatial design. Cultural fusion follows infrastructure. annual festivals spread across continents, combining human music with resonant hadrosaur calls that can be heard for kilometers. Public art projects cover retaining walls and transit hubs with layered murals that depict Earth's early history from both perspectives. Human geological timelines, alongside dinosaur oral accounts of migration routes, nesting grounds, and ancient climate shifts. Because of this shared authorship, media archives begin to include narratives that no single species could have formed alone. Yet beneath this apparent stability, warning signals accumulate. Long-term climate records, tracked jointly by human satellites and pterosaur high atmosphere survey flights, show abrupt changes in upper air circulation. A new pattern of impact flashes appears in the night sky. Disease surveillance teams detect unfamiliar pathogens in mixed herds. The emerging city partnership has transformed daily life, but can it withstand a crisis that threatens the entire surface of the planet? Those warning signals mark a turning point. The partnership between humans and dinosaurs, once presented as a triumph of adaptation, now faces a different kind of test. The planet itself begins to shift beneath them. When climate patterns destabilize, the very traits that made the great reptiles impressive allies become serious liabilities. Large-bodied dinosaurs are especially exposed to rising heat and prolonged drought. A single sauropod requires immense quantities of vegetation and water each day, and compact herds of hadrosaurs can strip wide areas of plant cover in a single season. During this time of intensifying heat waves, shaded forests retreat upslope, wetlands dry, and migration corridors across the continents fracture into isolated patches. As a result, animals that once roamed widely to track favorable conditions find themselves trapped in shrinking climatic islands. This process does not only threaten individual herds, it feeds back into the climate system itself. Overgrazed plains lose deep-rooted plants that held soil and moisture, so dust storms increase, changing how much sunlight reaches the surface. Trampled wetlands, expanded to support mixed human-dinosaur agriculture, release more methane as warm, anoxic mud is churned by heavy feet. Because of this, dense concentrations of giant herbivores, once celebrated as living infrastructure, start to resemble engines that amplify regional warming and drying, if not carefully managed. Human planners respond with emergency measures that reshape the map of Earth. Vast relocation corridors are carved across continents, connecting remaining river systems, upland refuges, and coastal deltas so that herds can be moved before local collapse occurs. New climate-controlled sanctuaries, part city and part reserve, are constructed with buried heat exchangers that draw excess warmth downward toward the mantle, stabilizing local temperatures and humidity for sensitive lineages. In the atmosphere, reflective aerosols and engineered cloud layers are deployed in targeted bands, designed not only to protect human settlements, but to preserve key dinosaur grazing zones and nesting coasts. These interventions come with difficult choices. As food and fresh water are rationed, councils must decide which species and lineages receive priority in transport, medical care, and engineered habitats. Do the largest sauropods, with their immense cultural value, continue to claim entire valleys of cropland? Are swift, intelligent theropods, vital for security and long-distance communication, favored over slower ancient lineages that shaped early history but offer less tangible benefit now? Social tensions rise as communities argue over whether the planet can still sustain so many giants. A pattern interrupt arrives in the public imagination: comparisons with the end Cretaceous event that never happened in this timeline. Scientists project global circulation models onto maps filled with dinosaur migration routes and human cities, asking a stark question: is this a second chance being squandered? Over time, it becomes clear that the crisis is not local. Ocean circulation, polar ice, and atmospheric chemistry all begin to shift together, linking distant continents into a single stressed system. The alliance that once transformed daily life now confronts challenges on a planetary scale. The next phase of the story moves from regional improvisation to coordinated global decisions about how an Earth shared by humans and dinosaurs can endure rapid environmental change. As regional crises begin to synchronize into a planetary emergency, a new kind of threat moves through this shared Earth. Not fire, not drought, but invisible organisms traveling in the breath, blood, and waste of a tightly linked human-dinosaur world. In cities where hadrosaur caravans, human commuters, and flocks of small theropods crowd the same streets, every contact becomes a possible bridge for disease. In such dense environments, zoonotic risks expand far beyond those known in the early history of the planet. Pathogens that once circulated only in small dinosaur herds now encounter human lungs, mammalian livestock, and urban scavengers on the same pavement. A respiratory virus that formed in the nasal passages of a mid-sized ceratopsian might adapt step by step, first to stable workers, then to their families, and finally to distant continents through airborne pterosaur transport. Because of this, the boundary between human disease and animal disease begins to dissolve. Over time, medicine responds by reorganizing itself. Instead of separate hospitals and barns, integrated biosecurity complexes rise at the edges of major population centers. This process links human physicians, dinosaur veterinarians, ecologists, and data scientists into a single surveillance network. Waste from sauropod transit lines, air from underground metro systems, and blood samples from herd vaccinations are all scanned in near real time. Joint vaccination campaigns move along the same routes as grain and passengers, with mobile platforms that can inoculate a line of stegosaurs and their handlers in a single coordinated pass. When a global pandemic finally emerges, it does not begin in humans. It begins in a key domesticated dinosaur species that anchors both food and transport. Imagine a fast-spreading hemorrhagic disease in hadrosaurs, the primary grain haulers and a major source of meat and fertilizer. Herds collapse within weeks. Grain rots in distant interior continents because there are no living carriers to move it to coastal cities. As a result, human populations experience secondary famine, while trade networks stall and atmospheric emissions even dip temporarily as heavy transport ceases. During this time, evolution accelerates under intense pressure. Some hadrosaur lineages carry rare genetic variants that blunt the pathogen's entry into their cells, and these survivors become the foundation for new, resistant breeds. Human communities, exposed repeatedly but protected by partial vaccines, show subtle shifts in immune-related genes over generations. Parallel to this, microbiome engineering expands. Symbiotic bacteria are transferred between humans, dinosaurs, and even soils to create shared microbial shields that can block or outcompete dangerous invaders. In the long term, the lesson becomes difficult to ignore. Survival on a planet where humans and dinosaurs share air, water, and food may depend on coordinated evolution rather than isolated adaptation. Researchers begin to ask a deeper question. If resistance traits can move across genomes, should deliberate genetic merging of certain human and dinosaur traits become part of global biosecurity? The answer to that question leads the story from emergency response into a deliberate redesign of life itself. From this point, genetic engineering no longer focuses only on survival. It begins to shape a shared future. Laboratories on the planet that once studied fossils now design therapies that link the deep history of humans and dinosaurs at the level of DNA. The first wave of treatments borrows traits that once formed inside dinosaur bones, skin, and immune systems. Experimental therapies use genes underlying dense sauropod vertebrae to reinforce fragile human spines, helping those whose own bones fail under everyday gravity. Regeneration pathways, modeled on fast-healing dinosaur limb injuries inferred from fossil bone textures, are tested to reduce scarring and restore damaged cartilage. During this time, researchers also explore ancient reptilian immune patterns, hoping to gain resistance to certain respiratory infections that spread easily across mixed human-dinosaur settlements. As a result, a reciprocal effort emerges. Geneticists begin inserting modified human and avian dinosaur genes into non-avian dinosaurs to help them cope with rapidly changing climates. Heat tolerance genes, tuned to manage internal temperature on an Earth where cities and enclosures trap additional heat near the surface, allow polar-adapted species to live closer to the equator. Cognitive enhancement projects, inspired by the structure of the human cortex and the complex brains of early birds, slightly rewire theropod neural tissue. The aim is not to create human minds, but to support better memory, problem-solving, and stable social bonds. Alongside these changes, communication interfaces appear. This process links engineered sensory neurons in dinosaur skulls with external devices that translate vocalizations and body signals into structured sound patterns. Over time, certain herding hadrosaurs and mid-sized predators develop semi-symbolic communication with human handlers, blurring the line between domestication and partnership. What does it mean when a dinosaur not only responds to commands, but also requests changes to its own environment? More controversial work takes place in secure facilities. Chimeric beings are grown as organ donors, combining dinosaur vascular resilience with human-compatible tissues to create hearts that endure decades of high activity. Hybrid skin grafts mix scales and keratin with human cells to protect firefighters and high-altitude workers from heat and radiation. Because of this, proposals arise for more integrated organisms. Bipedal forms with human-like hands and dinosaur-like musculature, intended for extreme construction or planetary exploration. Ethical councils hesitate, yet the technology continues to advance. Philosophical questions follow close behind the science. When genetic boundaries flow like ancient magma beneath the crust, definitions of human and dinosaur lose their sharp edges. If a child inherits reinforced bones, enhanced healing, and modified temperature regulation from therapies given to parents, is that still a medical intervention or the beginning of a new lineage? In parallel, lineages of selectively engineered dinosaurs, bred for cognition and shared communication systems, begin to diverge from their wild relatives. Over long spans of time, these changes may become as stable as the formation of continents. Engineered traits, once rare and experimental, spread through populations, shaped by natural selection and culture. Future Earth could hold three broad lineages on its surface: traditional humans, traditional dinosaurs, and a spectrum of descendants that carry genes from both. The next stage of the story asks how such a triad of intelligences might govern ecosystems, technology, and the shared mantle of planetary stewardship. As this triad of intelligences matures, one question becomes unavoidable. Does their shared future remain bound to a single planet? Or does it extend into space? The same curiosity that once mapped Earth's continents begins to turn outward, toward other worlds that formed under different conditions, but are shaped by the same universal physics. In the early stages of spaceflight, small dinosaurs take on a role similar to the first orbital animals in real history. Light, resilient species descended from troodontid-like ancestors are sent on suborbital and then orbital paths, their hearts, balance organs, and behavior monitored in low gravity. During this time, scientists learn which lineages tolerate confinement, changing acceleration, and altered day-night cycles. Over time, these experiments shift from simple survival tests to long-duration missions, where select dinosaurs become companions, providing psychological support through familiar sounds and movement in otherwise mechanical habitats. As a result, spacecraft and early stations are redesigned around shared occupancy. Habitat modules must handle the different gait and mass distribution of certain small herbivores and agile theropods. Exercise spaces include climbing frames and perches for feathered forms, while treadmills and harness systems support both human and dinosaur joints in microgravity. Waste management becomes a central engineering challenge because of this dual species arrangement. Air circulation, microbial control, and closed-loop water systems are all tuned to process mixed organic output without destabilizing the life support chemistry. Designers also discover that environmental enrichment is not optional. Enclosed gardens with layered vegetation, shallow soil trays, and textured surfaces are built into station walls, turning bare corridors into narrow artificial ecosystems. This process stabilizes crew mental health and helps maintain dinosaur social behaviors that evolved on open landscapes and forested slopes of Earth's crust. The stations begin to look less like machines and more like fragments of the planet's surface suspended in orbit. Once travel to other worlds becomes possible, attention turns to colonization and terraforming. Prospective exoplanets with stable crust, moderate heat, flow from the mantle, and accessible water are evaluated not only for human habitability, but for entire curated biomes. Seed ships carry spores, seeds, engineered microbes, and carefully chosen dinosaur eggs. Assemblages are designed so that herbivores, predators, plants, and decomposers recreate key ecological processes from forest browsing to nutrient cycling on plains and basins that once held only bare rock and thin air. However, this outward expansion triggers intense ethical debate. Is exporting Earth's megafauna a form of planetary stewardship, or a repetition of past extinctions and invasive cascades on a grander stage? What rights do ancient lineages have when released onto worlds that never knew them? Councils argue over quarantine rules, genetic safeguards, and whether some planets should remain free of any life from Earth. Far in the future, descendants of this civilization, some fully human, some fully dinosaurian, some blended beyond easy classification, stand on distant continents under unfamiliar constellations. For them, Earth has become a distant ancestral memory, a shared homeland of rock, water, and mantle heat. The next chapter asks what happens when those distant heirs finally decide to turn back and confront the planet that formed them all. When those distant heirs finally turn their attention homeward, the planet that formed them answers with a familiar, unsettling signal. Far from Earth, in observatories built by human engineers and dinosaur mathematicians, instruments begin to record a faint, moving point of light. Calculations refine, margins shrink, and a clear picture emerges. A new asteroid, hundreds of kilometers across, has entered a trajectory that will intersect Earth's orbit. At first, this discovery is treated as a problem of celestial mechanics, not of survival. During this time, orbital models are adjusted, gravitational influences mapped, and uncertainties reduced with every passing week. Over time, however, the projections converge on a narrow window that cuts directly through Earth's future position. The impact energy is estimated, the probable crater size outlined, and a single historical comparison rises again and again in quiet conference halls. Chicxulub. In this timeline, non-avian dinosaurs did not vanish in that earlier event. They endured, adapted, and later entered into partnership with humans. Now history appears to be attempting the same experiment with higher stakes. This process of comparison is not only scientific, but cultural. Ancient dinosaur oral traditions describing darkened skies and burning forests are reinterpreted alongside human reconstructions of the end Cretaceous impact. The message is simple and unsettling. The planet has seen this before. Because of this, mobilization begins on a global and interplanetary scale. Orbital shipyards are redirected to construct massive deflection craft. Some are powered by fusion engines that channel mantle heat harvested from tectonically active colonies. Others carry kinetic impactors designed to strike the asteroid repeatedly and nudge its orbit. On Earth's surface, evacuation plans unfold along the continents. Low-lying coastal plains, major river systems, and vulnerable crustal basins are mapped as high-risk zones for tsunamis and seismic shock. Difficult questions follow. If worst-case scenarios unfold, which ecosystems are protected first? Vast sauropod migration corridors, old-growth conifer forests, and human-dinosaur agricultural regions all compete for limited shielding, relocation, and genetic archiving. Vaults are expanded to store seeds, microbial communities, and frozen embryos from both species. Some pterosaur populations are trained for long-distance atmospheric monitoring, turning the sky itself into an early warning network. The emotional stakes are unprecedented. For the first time, humans and dinosaurs face a shared possibility of extinction, fully aware that their ancestors once stood at a similar threshold and survived only through geological fortune. Families that include both primate and reptilian lineages watch simulations of impact winters, asking whether their hybrid descendants will ever see open skies again. Religious and philosophical traditions reinterpret the asteroid not as pure catastrophe, but as a final examination of this joint civilization's maturity. Then, a deliberate pattern break occurs in the narrative of this world. Instead of accepting the asteroid as an inevitable reset, the combined civilization treats it as a test of everything learned since that first spared extinction. What has this long partnership actually done for Earth's ability to respond to existential threats? The answer lies in the next synthesis, a full accounting of how a shared planetary history can reshape the fate of a vulnerable world. In this alternate history, the turning point arrives not with destruction, but with a near miss. 66 million years ago, the asteroid still enters the inner solar system, but its impact is weakened or diverted. Earth's crust shudders, climates shift, yet the non-avian dinosaurs survive. Over time, they diversify again, filling forests, coasts, and inland seas with new forms, while early mammals remain small and cautious in the shadows. During this time, hominin evolution unfolds on a planet already claimed by reptilian giants. When early toolmakers stand up on African plains, they do so under skies crossed by pterosaurs and across grasslands patterned by sauropod trails. The first era is one of observation rather than control. Small human groups track hadrosaur herds as they track antelope, map tyrannosaur territories as carefully as rivers, and encode dinosaur behavior in stories long before it is written in any script. A second broad era begins when observation turns into domestication. Certain herbivores with herding instincts and moderate temperaments are slowly drawn into human camps. This process mirrors the taming of horses and cattle on another Earth, but here it involves plated stegosaurs used as living shields, hadrosaurs pulling early plows, and smaller, agile theropods trained as hunting partners. Because of this new biological toolkit, agrarian landscapes are reshaped, fields are wider, transport is heavier, and villages are arranged around enclosures that must hold many tons of restless muscle. As human societies scale up into kingdoms and empires, a third era emerges: imperial and early industrial exploitation. Dinosaurs become engines of conquest and labor. Armies mount armored hadrosaur cavalry, engineers harness massive sauropods to move stone blocks, and coastal powers drive marine reptiles before their fleets as living rams. Over time, selective breeding and early bioengineering amplify traits of strength, speed, and obedience. Observation has become control. Control deepens into dependence on dinosaur power for agriculture, warfare, and trade. A fourth era takes shape with fossil fuels, electricity, and genetics. Industrial machines begin to rival living strength, and ethical reflection follows. What does it mean to keep a troodontid with near-corvid intelligence as a factory asset? How should a city plan for the rights and safety of multi-ton citizens that share its avenues and airspace? During this time, dependence begins to shift into partnership, as law, culture, and science recognize dinosaurs not only as resources, but as co-actors in a technological world. Across all these stages, a repeating loop appears. Observation leads to control, control to dependence, dependence to ethical debate, and debate to deeper partnership. As a result, the cognitive, cultural, and technical capacities of both lineages are continually reshaped. By the modern era, shared satellite networks track migration, gene therapies protect mixed communities from disease, and coordinated climate projects use both engineered machines and living dinosaurs to stabilize the planet. The long arc of this timeline prepares a joint response to planetary threats. It shows how a missed extinction could foster a civilization that treats other intelligent lineages and entire ecosystems as collaborators rather than background. What does that imply for real-world relationships with animals and environments? The next synthesis turns from this imagined Earth back to the actual planet, asking how such a shared destiny might still be formed. Shared destiny in such a world would not arise from a single decision, but from a repeating engine of change. In human-dinosaur relations, domestication acts like a process that runs in loops. Each cycle selects particular traits, alters behavior at the herd scale, and then feeds back into culture, setting the stage for the next round of selection. At the start of this loop, humans favor calmer, less reactive individuals from wild populations. When large hadrosaur herds move across floodplains, hunters and herders would notice which animals tolerate proximity, recover quickly from alarm, and follow simple pressure cues. Those are spared, protected, and allowed to breed. Over time, this quiet preference reshapes the genetic landscape of the herd, in the same way that early choices once turned wolves into dogs and wild aurochs into cattle. Hadrosaurs provide a clear case study for how this domestication feedback engine might operate. Early in the relationship, herds remain wary, keeping distance from settlements along the river margins. During this time, only a few juveniles are captured and hand-raised. As generations pass, lines diverge. One lineage is selected for strong backs and steady gaits on soft ground, ideal for riding across wet deltaic plains. Another is bred for tractable behavior in tight spaces, pulling plows through heavy soils where the crust of flood deposits hardens after seasonal rains. A third becomes smaller, more social, and more attentive to human voices, turning into true companions. As these specialized lines emerge, herd behavior itself begins to change. Animals that once scattered at sudden movement now tend to cluster around familiar handlers. Vocalizations shift toward calls that coordinate with human signals. Because of this, mixed groups of riders and hadrosaurs can traverse dense forests or broad savannas as integrated units rather than separate species moving in parallel. The loop continues. Cooperative behavior is rewarded, and those rewards guide further breeding. Human societies are reshaped in parallel. Skills form around reading hadrosaur posture and eye movement, around managing their complex social hierarchies, and around treating disease that spreads rapidly through dense corrals. Myths arise that tie the rhythm of migrations to the turning of the planet, and institutions form to regulate breeding rights, grazing territories, and military use. As a result, entire economies depend on hadrosaur labor in the same way many historical cultures depended on horses and cattle. However, this engine has unintended consequences. Narrow selection reduces genetic diversity, making domesticated herds vulnerable to emerging diseases or climate shifts. Some lines become so adapted to human protection that they lose the ability to evade large predators or to navigate rugged terrains without guidance. What happens when an animal can no longer survive away from human settlements? The dependency binds both partners to shared risks. This domestication loop mirrors real Earth history. Dogs, cattle, and horses all pass through similar cycles of selection, behavioral change, and cultural embedding. In a human-dinosaur world, the same underlying mechanism would run, but on a larger physical scale and with deeper ecological impacts. The next step is to ask how such coevolution would alter cities, warfare, and even planetary engineering when these giant partners become part of the built environment itself. As dinosaurs become woven into the built environment, another powerful force begins to reshape the relationship: technology. The same inventive drive that channels rivers and raises towers also turns toward harnesses, medicines, and tools that extend what dinosaur partners can do. During this time, the line between simple domestication and engineered collaboration grows thinner with each generation. The initial phase is one of amplification. Specialized tack spreads from city to city, articulated neck collars for sauropods that distribute weight along the spine, shock-absorbing foot armor for hadrosaurs working on stone streets, and glide-stabilizing frames for large pterosaurs carrying messages over crowded districts. Veterinary science follows. As a result, vaccines tuned to dinosaur immune systems, bone-strengthening supplements for fast-growing juveniles, and behavioral training methods adapted from corvids and parrots increase their reliability and working lifespans. This process does not just make old tasks easier. It opens entirely new roles, such as high-altitude reconnaissance by troodontid pterosaur teams, or precision agricultural work by small, agile herbivores. Over time, however, the same technological imagination that enhances dinosaur labor begins to replace it. Combustion engines, electric motors, and later autonomous machines enter mines, quarries, and battlefields. Heavy tracked vehicles take over from ceratopsian shock troops in frontal assaults. Mechanical cranes lift loads that once required entire sauropod crews. In deep-sea environments, submersibles begin to outcompete trained marine reptiles for dangerous salvage and exploration. Because of this substitution, direct dependence on dinosaur muscle declines, even as human infrastructure still assumes their presence. This substitution phase is not neutral. Communities built around breeding and training large herds face economic collapse when machines undercut them. Traditional guilds of pterosaur handlers lose military contracts to remote sensing satellites and drones. Social tensions rise as some regions cling to dinosaur-based economies, while others mechanize rapidly. Ethical questions sharpen. If a machine can face toxic fumes or enemy fire, is it acceptable to send a living partner instead? A third phase follows, defined by revaluation rather than abandonment. As dangerous and high-intensity tasks shift to machines, dinosaurs are gradually freed from some of the harshest forms of labor. In response, societies begin to imagine them less as tools and more as companions, citizens, or highly specialized workers in niches that machines still struggle to fill. Intelligent theropods might serve as negotiators in wilderness regions where subtle ecological cues matter. Long-lived sauropods with extensive spatial memory could curate ancient forest corridors or maintain migration routes across continents. Law and ethics lag, then lurch forward. Each technological shift forces new debates over what humans owe to their longtime partners. Retirement rights for war hadrosaurs, bodily autonomy for sapient troodontids, protections for wild populations genetically linked to domesticated lines. These arguments mirror modern anxieties about automation and human labor, but displaced onto another species. When a factory replaces a dinosaur team, who has truly been automated away, and what obligations remain? In the end, the process outcome loop between technology and dinosaur roles becomes a mirror for the planet's own industrial story. The crucial question becomes not just what dinosaurs do for cities, but what cities in turn will choose to become around them. And the next transformation pushes that question to a planetary scale. In a world built around humans and dinosaurs, cities do not sit on top of ecosystems. They are braided into them. Over time, the partnership between species becomes a process outcome loop of its own, as plants, animals, and even human minds adjust to the constant presence of giant reptilian partners. Across the planet, ecological coevolution reshapes the surface. Large herding herbivores, such as hadrosaurs and some sauropods, graze in patterns guided by human herders and fences. This process favors plants that can regrow quickly after repeated browsing, spread through trampled soils, or hide their seedlings among dino-safe thorn thickets. Predators respond in turn. Packs of smaller theropods begin to shadow human-protected herds, learning to take old or sick animals at the margins, or to switch toward wild prey that now cluster in the ungrazed reserves humans set aside. Because of this, landscapes begin to show a distinctive mosaic. Intensively managed pasture belts, shaped by dino feet and human tools, grade into semi-wild corridors where carnivores and scavengers patrol. Riverbanks are armored not just by roots, but by the regular passage of heavy bodies that press the crust into firm terraces. Over time, entire regions are defined by joint human-dinosaur activity, much as ancient floodplains once reflected the behavior of early forests and rivers. Cognitive coevolution unfolds in parallel. Generations grow up reading tail angles, eye movements, and the subtle shifts in posture that signal a hadrosaur's alarm or a troodontid's curiosity. Cultural traditions form around these skills. Specialized dino readers in caravans, urban signalers guiding aerial pterosaurs between towers, and healers who know that a slight change in vocalization can mark the first day of illness. Over many centuries, selection may even favor human traits such as sharper motion detection or enhanced auditory discrimination. On the dinosaur side, individuals most responsive to human gestures, sounds, and scent markers gain protection, food, and breeding opportunities. This process slowly pushes populations toward heightened social awareness, stronger memory, and flexible learning. In effect, humans and dinosaurs begin to occupy a shared cognitive space where signals pass rapidly across species boundaries. Such tightly linked systems can be remarkably resilient. When climate shifts alter rainfall patterns, co-evolved grazing routes and seed dispersal networks help plants track new moisture zones, while human planning and dinosaur mobility buffer local shortages. Yet the same tight coupling creates new vulnerabilities. A disease that jumps from humans into herd dinosaurs, or from dinosaurs into human populations, can now spread along trade lines, pilgrimage routes, and seasonal migrations that were once strengths. Consider a respiratory pathogen that first circulates quietly in urban pterosaur rookeries. During this time, it adapts to both dinosaur and human airways. As a result, an outbreak can move from cliffside nesting sites to ground markets, and then into distant agricultural basins in a single season. Similarly, a prolonged drought can cascade from stressed plants to weakened herds, and finally to human societies that depend on their labor and transport. This coevolutionary loop is not unique to an imagined dinosaur age. On modern Earth, domesticated animals, crops, and even urban wildlife already respond to human pressures in accelerated cycles. The human-dinosaur partnership simply makes this visible at a larger, more dramatic scale, setting the stage for the next question. What happens when conscious genetic design begins to steer that coevolution deliberately, rather than waiting for it to unfold on its own? When a human dinosaur world is viewed from a distance, an unexpected pattern appears. The central story is not about claws, teeth, or scales. It is about how humans respond to power. The power to control other beings, to exploit their capacities, and eventually, to recognize minds and emotions that are different from human minds, but still very real. During this time, early encounters with giant reptiles would almost certainly follow familiar stages. First comes fear, as large theropods and towering sauropods are perceived as moving natural disasters. Then comes pragmatic use, as herding hadrosaurs, armored ankylosaurs, and swift dromaeosaurs are captured, trained, and selectively bred. Over time, This process would turn wild herds into living infrastructure, traction for agriculture, transport across continents, and weapons in organized warfare. As a result, the same animal could occupy sharply different roles in different regions of the planet. In one culture, a troodontid lion with high intelligence might be treated as a dangerous tool, fitted with leather hoods and signal harnesses. In another, the same lineage might be raised in households, given individual names, and buried with ceremonial care. The tension between seeing an animal as equipment and seeing it as an individual would run through the entire alternate history. Because of this, long-term coexistence would steadily push societies toward more nuanced relational views. When a sauropod matriarch refuses to move without her injured calf, or when a veteran ceratopsian clearly recognizes former handlers after years away, such events challenge purely instrumental thinking. Laws, myths, and scientific studies would begin to reflect this shift, asking whether certain dinosaur species possess forms of memory, attachment, or even culture that demand moral consideration. These patterns are not unique to an imagined dinosaur Earth. They already exist in present relationships with dogs, livestock, and wildlife. Working dogs share homes, emotions, and complex communication with humans, yet are also bred and trained for human purposes. Cattle and pigs are managed at industrial scales, their lives shaped by efficiency, even as individual animals may be treated gently by particular handlers. Wild predators are admired in documentaries and protected in reserves, while being removed when they threaten farms or cities. The contradictions of affection, utility, and control are already embedded in the planet's current biosphere. In this sense, befriending dinosaurs functions as a magnifying lens for human nature. The sheer size and potential danger of these animals make every choice clearer: to chain or to collaborate, to treat as property or as partner. The next step is to ask what this reveals about possible futures with the species that actually walk, fly, and swim across Earth today, and how conscious design of those relationships might reshape the shared history still to come. In the real history of Earth, the choice that framed this entire thought experiment never existed. About 66 million years ago, an asteroid several kilometers wide struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. In a matter of hours, the impact transformed the planet's surface, ignited forests, disturbed the crust, and sent dust and aerosols high into the atmosphere. During this time, non-avian dinosaurs that had dominated land ecosystems for over 150 million years began a rapid and permanent decline, yet the lineage did not end completely. Over time, small feathered theropods, already present in the late Cretaceous, survived and diversified into modern birds. This process means that every sparrow on a city sidewalk and every gull along a coastline carries part of the same deep history as tyrannosaurs and hadrosaurs. The descendants of once dominant reptiles now perch on power lines, forage in fields, and migrate across continents with very little notice from the species that currently reshapes the planet. Imagining a world in which large dinosaurs persisted and entered into partnership with humans highlights what was lost when that asteroid struck. Herds of hadrosaurs integrated into agriculture, or intelligent theropods working alongside human communities, create a vivid sense of alternative possibilities. Because of this contrast, the presence of ordinary birds becomes more significant. A crow solving a problem or a parrot learning complex sounds can be seen as a small surviving window into cognitive capacities that might have developed in larger dinosaur forms. At the same time, this alternate timeline reflects back on present conditions. The current rate of extinction, driven by habitat loss, climate change, overexploitation, and pollution, has been compared to past mass extinctions in Earth's history. For amphibians in fragmented forests, for coral reefs exposed to warming oceans, or for large mammals confined to shrinking ranges, human activity functions like a prolonged impact event. The difference is that this impact does not arrive from the outer solar system. It spreads through land use decisions, energy systems, and patterns of consumption. Here, the central distinction from an asteroid becomes clear. A space rock follows orbital mechanics and gravity. It does not choose a path. Human societies possess agency. They can alter the concentration of greenhouse gases, determine how much habitat remains connected, and decide whether other species are treated as expendable obstacles or potential partners. As a result, the future of many lineages now hinges on deliberate choices rather than external catastrophe. Seen in this way, the thought experiment of shared history with dinosaurs is less about fantasy and more about responsibility. It suggests that humans can act as allies to the living world, shaping relationships that resemble collaboration rather than domination. The next step is to consider what that allyship might look like in practice, and how conscious partnership with existing species could redirect the long-term story of life on this planet. In that context, it becomes easier to imagine allyship not as an abstract ideal, but as a daily reality. Consider a single relationship, one human life shaped around one dinosaur companion. When this kind of connection is brought down to the scale of a home, a street, or a workplace, the idea of partnership with another species gains texture, routine, and consequence. Picture a specific animal rather than a distant herd. Perhaps a medium-sized hadrosaur, about the height of a small truck, with a patterned crest used for low, resonant calls. Perhaps a feathered theropod with keen eyesight and a problem-solving mind similar to an early corvid. In such a world, morning would not begin with checking a phone, but with checking the enclosure, the feeding trough, and the animal's posture and breathing. Over time, the rhythm of feeding, grooming, and guided exercise would structure each day. This daily rhythm would demand space and planning. A large herbivore would require secure yards, reinforced flooring, and access to vegetation in volumes far beyond those needed for any present-day pet. A smaller, agile predator would require complex environments to prevent boredom and stress, including climbing frames, puzzles, and regular training. During this time, communication would extend beyond simple commands, involving learned vocal signals, body language, and perhaps wearable devices that translate certain calls into approximate meanings. Such intimacy would bring responsibilities that are not only physical, but emotional and social. A dinosaur bonded to a household would depend on consistent interaction, clear boundaries, and advocacy in wider society. Zoning laws, transport systems, and emergency protocols would all influence its welfare. Because of this, an individual caretaker would need to understand not just the animal's behavior, but also the legal and ethical frameworks that protect it from exploitation, neglect, or inappropriate labor. From this starting point, entire careers would emerge. Veterinary medicine would expand into specialized dinosaur physiology, dealing with bones adapted to massive weight, respiratory systems shaped by ancient atmospheric conditions, and immune responses that diverged deep in Earth's evolutionary history. Trainers and behaviorists would design methods grounded in comparative studies of birds, reptiles, and mammals. Urban planners would model streets, bridges, and building entrances around mixed flows of humans and large vertebrates, ensuring that the built surface of continents could safely carry foot, wheel, and claw. Art and research would also transform. Painters, sculptors, and digital creators would explore new forms inspired by crests, feathers, and armored plates. Field biologists would document migration routes that cross human borders, while social scientists would study how shared cities alter perceptions of personhood and community. As a result, culture itself would be co-authored by multiple lineages. In the present, many lives are already intertwined with animals, from working dogs and livestock to birds in urban parks. This process of care, attention, and mutual adjustment is familiar, even if the scale is smaller. The question is, how far such relationships might deepen if treated as conscious partnerships rather than background habit, and what that would mean for the next chapter of life on this planet. that chapter has not yet been written, and the choices made about real animals today will determine whether future histories describe separation or something far more integrated, and the next section will examine how that decision might unfold. The next step is to close the loop between this imagined history and the decisions that are still open on this planet. The journey has moved from a single missed asteroid through shared evolution to domestication, industrial use, digital integration, and finally, to a far future partnership in which humans and dinosaurs shape continents together rather than struggle over the same ground. At the beginning, the Altered Impact event simply changed the starting conditions. Yet over time, that small difference redirected the entire history of life. Dinosaurs did not vanish from the surface. Instead, they remained major ecological engineers while primates evolved alongside them. This process created a world in which humans never knew an Earth without large reptilian neighbors, and every later decision about technology or settlement unfolded in that context. As societies expanded, some dinosaur lineages entered barns, fields, and city streets. Herd-forming herbivores became transport and agricultural partners. Intelligent theropods learned signals, routes, and shared routines. During this time, domestication did not remove their agency, it reshaped it. Because of this, human cultures grew around daily negotiation with powerful non-human bodies, rather than around their absence. Industrial and digital phases added further layers. Living engines pulled heavy loads across the crust, while sensors and algorithms tracked health, behavior, and migration. Neural interfaces allowed certain trained animals to interact with information systems so that ecological knowledge flowed directly into planning. As a result, the boundary between biological communities and built environments became more porous than in familiar history. In the far future scenes, genetic engineering and planetary management extended that partnership to the scale of continents and climate. Large browsers helped maintain fire regimes. Soaring forms monitored oceans and ice. The key pattern remained the same. Each technological step asked whether other species were tools to be consumed or partners in shaping a long-lived biosphere. The central insight is that befriending dinosaurs here is a stand-in for a broader question. How might relationships with all non-human life be made more ethical, more reciprocal, and more attentive to long-term planetary stability? The scenario magnifies that question by placing it against large bodies, visible power, and clear consequences. In daily life, the same logic can apply to familiar animals. Urban birds, synanthropic mammals, farm herds, and distant marine species can be framed as background or as co-inhabitants of a shared Earth. What changes when a pigeon is understood as part of a city's ventilation of heat and nutrients? Or when a grazing field is seen as a joint project between soil organisms, plants, and livestock? Small shifts in mindset can begin this reframing. Learning about local ecosystems, supporting conservation that protects habitats rather than single icons, and questioning assumptions about constant extraction from animals all mirror the more dramatic choices in the alternate timeline. Over time, these practices alter which futures remain possible. Exercises of imagination like this one matter because they stretch the range of outcomes that can be taken seriously. If a world of human-dinosaur partnership can be traced in detail, what other arrangements with present-day life might exist just outside current expectations? The next section will turn that widened sense of possibility into explicit choices and actions that still lie ahead. Imagination opens possible futures, but it does not choose among them. That choice still lies ahead, on a planet where non-avian dinosaurs no longer walk the surface, yet their history continues to shape thought, science, and ethics. The question now becomes, how will this expanded sense of possibility be used in the real world? A first step is deceptively simple. Consider which dinosaur would be chosen as a companion and why. Would it be a herd-living hadrosaur for its vigilance and group loyalty, Or a small sharp-eyed troodontid for its intelligence and problem-solving? Placing a name and a reason in the comments section turns an abstract scenario into a mirror of present values. It reveals which traits are sought in relationships with animals today: reliability, empathy, power, curiosity, or quiet endurance. During this time of reflection, it becomes clear that such preferences are not random. They are shaped by experiences with dogs, horses, parrots, and other animals that already share this planet. When someone chooses a hypothetical sauropod for patience and strength, it often echoes the same respect given to working animals that carry loads, pull plows, or guide people through difficult landscapes. As a result, the imagined bond with a dinosaur becomes a way to examine how existing bonds with living creatures are built and maintained. To keep that examination grounded, continued learning is essential. Subscribing to this channel and exploring related videos on dinosaur paleontology, domestication science, and extinction places speculation alongside the evidence that supports or challenges it. This process connects fossilized bone to living behavior and links the end Cretaceous impact to present conservation crises. Over time, a clearer picture forms of how Earth's crust, mantle, climate, and biosphere combined to make dinosaurs possible in the first place. Beyond the screen, tangible actions can extend that curiosity into practice. Visiting natural history museums brings direct contact with real fossil specimens that formed in ancient sediments and volcanic ash. Supporting wildlife conservation organizations or volunteering at animal shelters and rehabilitation centers turns interest in extinct reptiles into care for endangered birds, mammals, and reptiles that still inhabit the surface. Because of this, the deep history traced in rocks begins to influence decisions made in neighborhoods, cities, and ecosystems. Continuing to learn and act in this way becomes a quiet form of respect for the planet's long history. The age of non-avian dinosaurs has ended, but the lineages that survived, including birds and mammals, still respond to human choices. Each decision about land use, energy, and biodiversity either narrows or widens the paths available to future species. In the end, the central question is simple, but demanding. When distant descendants study the layers of rock that record this era, will they remember humanity as asteroid or ally? When imagining that verdict, another possibility emerges. A timeline where humanity chose to become an ally, not only to birds and mammals, but to the great reptilian dynasties of the past. In this alternate history, distant descendants would read very different layers in Earth's crust and find a record of shared paths rather than sudden endings. Dawn forms a pale band behind a modern city, and the first sequence unfolds in slow detail. Trains glide along elevated tracks, while on a parallel causeway, a line of hadrosaurs moves with measured steps, carrying commuters in harnesses that glint in the early light. Smaller feathered theropods wait at crossings, alert to signals, their breath visible in the morning air. Between towers, pterosaurs rise on columns of heat from the streets below and then glide, banking carefully around glass and steel as the planet turns toward day. In a nearby park, another image appears. Children stand at the edge of a shallow pond, tossing feed to a cluster of knee-high downy herbivores that resemble living mosaics of color. One child leans against a patient, long-armed troodontid, tracing patterns in its plumage while it tilts its head, listening to distant traffic and birdsong together. During this time, the city feels less like a construction imposed on nature and more like an intricate habitat that many lineages share. The scene shifts outward to wide, unbroken landscapes. A broad plain stretches beneath a clear sky, and herds of ceratopsians move across the surface in sweeping arcs, horns and frills catching the sun. Ranger teams on Allosaurback maintain distance, guiding migrations away from fragile riverbanks and recently burned forest edges. This process is careful rather than exploitative. Drones map vegetation, collars track health, and decisions favor the long continuity of herds over short gains. Over time, the image suggests, coexistence becomes less about utility and more about stewardship. As these visuals continue, a final voiceover connects this imagined Earth to the one recorded in real rocks. It thanks viewers for following another branch of planetary history and notes that other timelines also wait in the wings. Worlds where the asteroid missed entirely, oceans where intelligent cephalopods formed cities, futures where continents merge again into a new supercontinent. Because of this, each episode becomes one experiment in asking how different choices, climates, and catastrophes might have reshaped life. The montage then dissolves through quieter, grounded images. Fossil bones rest in museum cases, their surfaces marked by time and pressure in the crust. A close view of fossilized feathers fades into the iridescent wing of a modern bird in flight, a dinosaur footprint preserved in stone transitions to a muddy trackway left by cranes, deer, and human boots along a riverbank, underlining the unbroken line from ancient reptile to present fauna. In the final shot, the camera returns to a single window at the edge of the city. A small bird lands on the sill, feathers ruffling in the light breeze, and tilts its head as if listening to distant herds and unseen pterosaurs. In that moment, the last living dinosaur shares the frame with the viewer's world, and the narration extends one quiet invitation. Keep imagining alternate Earths. Keep questioning how this one formed, and keep asking what roles humanity will choose in the next chapters of the planet's history.